morning. Buenos dias. How are you today? Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here after exams and all. And you probably are tired and want to go home at this point in the semester. So thank you for being here. We hope you're going to like the event. That's going to be very helpful for you and fruitful, and that you will come out of this event with new ideas for your career. Did I pronounce that right? Yes. Good. I wanted to tell you that being a foreign language student is something that you should be really proud of, and that you're very, very lucky to know a foreign language, because this is something you're going to keep for the rest of your life. And obviously, if you do it, it's because you enjoy it. And you can enjoy that for the rest of your life. You can continue learning your foreign language and really enjoy it. I still learn. I'm learning Spanish every day, and I love it. See? So once you like learning a foreign language, it's something you will be happy with. Hopefully, you will find a job where you can use that foreign language. And that's what we're going to do today, is present you with people who are using their foreign language in their jobs. Or maybe not, but who got their jobs because they were a foreign language student. And all those students are former Cave Hill students of French and Spanish. They are not students anymore, they are alumni, actually. And they are here. There are Christopher Lee, Kerry Cummins, Chantal Purcell, Juliette Mon, and Antonia Hines. And we want to thank you first for being here, because this event couldn't be possible without them. I also want to now briefly thank the other persons who contributed to this event. First of all, Dr. Ian Craig, who organized it. Thank you very much. And also the other members of the modern language staff who are here to help. Also the staff of the Office of Student, Corporate and Alumni Relation, Roseanne Maxwell, Sonia Johnson and Tiffany Lowe. And also Educational Media Service, all those nice technicians around that you see who are working hard to film the event. Thank you very much. And finally, that's it. I've said everything I needed to say. So I will let Ian speak now, Dr. Craig. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I just have a little piece of housekeeping before we start with the presentations. Everybody should have 2 pieces of paper. That's the student participants. One is the program and a few internet links, and the other one is a questionnaire which we'd like you to fill out and leave at some point before you go. There will be a little bit of time in the second half of the program to talk about its content and why we're taking the information. But if there's any hiatus for technical business, or if you finish your refreshments early, you don't know what to do with yourself, start filling out the questionnaire. It's very self-explanatory, and just make sure you, even if you just leave it on the food table outside before you go, you leave it somewhere so that we have a record of your response to our event. Just a word about the filming. I want you to try and forget about the filming, right? Let me just explain that the filming is for the following purposes. The edited footage will be available on a YouTube channel whose link will only be available to you, so you will be able to see the event again, and we will then ask your specific permission to make it available to other students only, right? So it won't be searchable, the link. You won't be able to find it. It'll have a very specific link that only you can see. And we're then going to use some of the footage to put up in a slightly more public space for the benefit of students who come after you. and that will be on the basis of having signed a release and will essentially be the footage from the actual presenters themselves, not you. If somebody asks a very fascinating question on film, we will then ask you to sign a release form so that we can use that footage. But basically, it's for internal use unless you have signed a release form. So please don't think that the filming is any big deal. You're not going to see yourself on CBC or anywhere else anytime soon. Sorry for those who wanted that. The other thing is about the refreshments. Please do not bring any food or drink back into this room. Eat outside in the hallway area. That's on pain of us never being allowed to use the room again, we're told. So please don't slip up and come back in with your food or drink. The refreshment break is 20 minutes, which should be plenty to get through a bagel and a brownie and a glass of juice. There's plenty of refreshments if our numbers stay the same as they are now. So 20 minutes will keep you occupied. We have allotted 20 minutes also approximately to each presenter, and that should leave us, if we go along at a fair clip and keep to that, with enough time in the second half for people to ask any questions. We're doing this for the first time, so we wanted to leave some space in the program to discuss other ways of doing it, better ways of doing this kind of event, or any kind of career concern that anybody has, any further questions for any of the panelists, or for any members of staff, or any kind of exchange. So there will be an opportunity to talk more freely towards the end of the program. But after each presenter, we'll also have a few minutes where we can ask any pressing specific questions that have arisen as a result of their presentations. Without further ado, we're going to hear from our lone male graduate, who is Christopher Lee, and he is going to give us a presentation. Some of the panelists opted to be interviewed, a couple of them. Others are just going to give a presentation. Christopher is going to give an oral presentation, no PowerPoint this time, and he's, I hope, going to explain to us how he came to acquire the very exotic job title of Journey's Ambassador for Hilton Barbados. Just to say, on the back of the program, there are brief bios for all of the presenters so that you can see their overall profile there as well. Thanks very much. Christopher, adelante.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Oh gosh, Dr. Craig gave me this big title, makes me feel so special with Journey Ambassador. It sounds like such a daunting title and so amazing, but it's very simple, deals with a lot of guest relations, but I'll explain about that later in the presentation. First, joining with Dr. Constant, it is very exciting to see all of you here. I think one of the good things that will get you further in life with your career is taking initiative, and by you being here today, you have basically said that you want to invest a lot into your career and your development. So thank you also for being here today. So just a short couple to start with my past, just a short couple of years ago, I think it's about 4, hopefully not too long. I was a UE student. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was studying management with French. I liked languages. My parents said, hey, if you're not sure 100%, like try business, it's a good base to have. So I was doing different volunteering with different organizations. I was with the language club and so forth. But in terms of my connection with Hilton, it came along because Hilton came and asked for interns. We had to go through an interview process, but I saw it because Hilton was an international organization, and I just said to myself, well, if I can get some work experience with this international organization, that would be great. It would open a lot of doors for me. Linking it to languages, one of the key things that they looked at was that I had French as a background. Now, later on in the career, I found that Spanish was a bit more preferable, but just having that other language definitely makes you more versatile. And so it makes you have that mobility factor where they can put you in other environments, especially when there's a need for someone that speaks another language, or if you're going to another country where that language is, whether it be French, Spanish, or English. After getting the internship, I think, just due to perseverance and the personality fit with the hospitality environment and industry, I applied for a job and I got it as guest services agent. with that, I learned a lot about how an international organization moves across countries and is able to create a certain level of consistency in the environment of certain brand standards, of service, in terms of dealing with customers, in dealing with conflict resolution. And so that's one of the things I found that Hilton really brought to the table. One of the really good things outside of that as well is that Hilton really focuses a lot on training and development for their students for their employees. And so when I was, as a guest services agent, I always found it, I said, well, always looking, what programs do you have? So outside of school, you'll find as you go along that a lot of these institutions, they have those programs there, and that's something also I implore you to ask about, see what they can do to further your development in that particular industry as well. So I heard about this program. It was called the Elevator, which I don't know if anybody was here, but I did a presentation at the university. But it's a management training program that they try to fast track graduates to the management level very quickly within an 18-month period. But one of the key components is you need to speak a second language. Now, the Spanish, again, is preferable because of our region. But again, another language was key. You need to have that. So I for the last 2 years or so, I was really vying. I was trying to find different opportunities. So as a result, I was able to go to Toronto, and I was able to go to New Orleans in trying to find different experiences that would help prepare me for the evaluation process of the Elevator, because they're looking for people with a global scope, somebody that is going to take initiative as you did today and go above and beyond so that they know that they can prepare them to be the future of the Hilton and of the company. Needless to say, I'm in that program right now, but in the interim, I'm also acting as the journey ambassador of the hotel. Now, to explain my role just a little bit, it is a guest relations role. I work with the front office department, and I do a lot of customizing the guest experience. As you can imagine, you meet all sorts of guests, and so with speaking various of languages, so I do my best to try and work with them. Google Translate does work a lot of times, and it helps a lot. But the French aspect of it, I'm able to do confidently, and I'm also learning Spanish, so that helps as well. Right now, in the Journey Ambassador role, we're seeing a big need for that intimate interaction in terms of, the guests come here and they can go to a beach anywhere, but what makes the difference is the interaction with the people. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier when you can speak the language and when you can kind of break that ice with them. In terms of the management training program, right now I'm in probably about halfway, but I'm going to be going to Latin and South America. So they've employed me to make sure I get my Spanish on target, and it's coming along poco a poco. And and so that's where I'm at right now, doing the Journey Ambassador role and doing the management trainee program. I can't stress, as Ian said, that having a language really does open up a lot of doors for you, and especially within the hospitality industry. I don't know how many of you are interested in going into that field, but it really just gives you that versatility, and it creates another level of interaction and experience when you're with people. And also when you go, as many of you hopefully will be able to travel and go to different forums, and you have all these languages swirling around you, it really just is kind of very euphoric in terms of the feeling that you get, and when you're able to interact with people on that level. So that's kind of it in terms of my progression. Does anybody have any questions in terms of the role or in terms of languages and needing it for the hospitality industry? Okay. I'm sure there are some questions. Any of the teachers?
First of all, where are you learning Spanish?
We're at the Venezuelan Institute, so which is free. So, there should be no excuses there. It's a pretty good program. A lot of it also tries to promote the culture of Venezuela as well. So, again, there's another added benefit of doing that particular program. Does anybody have any particular interest in hospitality or looking to do does an idea of where they want to go with their career? Students?
Can I ask something? Christopher, you didn't study hospitality?
No, I didn't.
So were you in competition when you were being interviewed for the internships with people who'd studied that specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was.
Can you just describe the the interview process, the recruitment process for those?
Well, Hilton has a very structured process. They look at the verbal aspects, then they look at the analytical, and then there's just the interviews to kind of get a feel for your personality and see how it would fit. So, they had 2 sets of written tests. It's very, they do a lot of analysis, and it's boiled down to a lot of numbers and so forth, as is the same program that I got into with the management training program. The reason why they, at that time, Hilton tried to opt to go for persons outside of hospitality is because they really do kind of look at the overall scope and say, you know what, I believe that persons from other departments can offer a different viewpoint and a fresh perspective on how to make hospitality better, even though they haven't been trained formally in that area. Yes, I did. It was very helpful. Understanding French culture, understanding French people, because that's also something that you have to take into consideration, which you will probably do when you've done the classes with the university, doing French for tourism, even doing the culinary aspects. You understand what happens when you're interacting with these people from the different countries, what might be appropriate when you're interacting with them. As you'll hear in some of the other presentations, when you go into somebody else's, homeland and you're doing, you're making certain body language and so forth, you have to know when that can be somewhat offensive. Yes.
Yeah, who kind of person who is interested in your field?
Mm-hmm.
Contact.
Well, right now, as I would have said, Hilton does have different programs available, but for next year, they do have the same recruitment for the same management training program, which we will be coming back to. So if you contact Dr. Roberts in the hospitality faculty, then they'll let you know when we're coming back to do the recruitment. Otherwise than that, Hilton does have a website called hiltoncareers.com. And you can put your CV there and just keep looking for any possible job openings as well. But it's from my perspective, it's a really great company. If you read at the back in terms of my advice, this spirit of volunteerism is very important. I think that we don't stress it enough. When I went into the internship, a lot of people were saying, well, are they going to pay you? And I said, well, no, but can you imagine 6 months? It was slated for 6 months. 6 months with an international organization, how many doors that can open up for you, especially with Hilton, because, right now, I started with Hilton Barbados, got to work in Hilton Toronto, Hilton New Orleans, and within the next 6 months or so, I'll be going to interact with people in Hilton all over like South America and Latin America. So you really have to just think about the bigger picture and think about trying to get as many experiences and opportunities as possible, and not just limit yourself to just one track mind. Yeah. Okay, so in summary, keep your languages. It's super, super important. It will really take you a lot of places. Keep your mind open to the different experiences and opportunities out there. Lord knows I really didn't have a focus at the beginning, but I find that the more experiences and the more opportunities you go for, it starts to mold you and starts to give you a feel for where you could possibly go and where you could possibly fit into the global work environment. So thank you very much.
Okay, we now move on to Kerry Cummins, who I am going to interview, sitting right here. So Chantal is going to swap with Kerry. Hello, Kerry.
Hi.
I know Kerry very well because she is currently doing the MA in Caribbean Studies at the same time as she is holding down her job as a primary school teacher, which she's held for some years now. So we invited her especially not only because she's a teacher, which is a profession a lot of people who study languages may have an interest in, or may end up doing even if they don't, in some cases, but also because she is integrating postgraduate study in our department with a full-time job. So, very simple first question, how do you do that?
Prayer. Time management, that's very important. Managing the schoolwork from UE and schoolwork from work. So it's time management, prayer, and a little bit of sleep.
Right, not much.
Not much, no.
Right. But you find yourself, I presume, doing quite a lot of schoolwork at weekends and so forth.
Yeah, weekends are the time to get the projects done, because on an evening when you come home from work, I still have to plan for the next day for school. So there's not much time on the evening. So I try to push off as much work on the weekend for UE.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get time off from teaching at all? Your employers, are they sympathetic to the fact that you're studying?
In terms of me coming to class,
You can edit the video, it's fine.
well, to come to class, the classes were in the morning, so my principal gave me the time to come. But no, you have to do your job, so you do what you have to do.
So you did get some time off?
Yeah, just to come for the 3 hours for the class. He don't let the ministry know, but my principal allowed me to leave and to do the class. So yeah, he's kind, but not every person would be allowed the opportunity to leave work and come and study and then go back. But
No, it's a mixed picture, I think. With
Yes.
some employers, I'm sure some of you have experience, are very sympathetic to the idea of people wanting to upgrade their studies and skills, and others are not so sympathetic.
especially since I told him that the classes would be good for my teaching career, so that was good for him. I think if I was looking to leave teaching, he would not have been so cooperative, but because the master's kind of ties in with teaching already, he was like, oh, yes, career development is good, so you go ahead. So
Very enlightened
Yeah.
principle.
yeah.
So you don't specifically, obviously, teach languages, because that doesn't happen in the primary school, I don't think, anymore much, does it?
Well, yes, Spanish is taught in the primary schools, but we have, at our school, we have a lady from Cuba. In the primary school, the people from Cuba, Venezuela are teaching the Spanish.
Well, that's still going.
Yeah, well, yeah. But what happens is that she's divided between 3 primary schools. I don't know how she gets it
Right.
done, but what the ministry had wanted to do was use Barbadians with the Spanish and French to teach in the primary schools. And I applied, but I'm still waiting for response. You know how government is. So hopefully, hopefully that would be implemented inside the primary school. But no, I don't use it. I might just teach the children a few little words in class, but you don't use Spanish in primary school.
You speak to Marlon about editing up the video.
Yes.
Did you always want to go into teaching? When you were graduating, were you sure that that was something you wanted to do?
Well, I always had a little feeling towards teaching, but when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Really and truly, I wanted to use the language, but I tried the teaching and I like it. I don't know.
And you're going to stay in it, you feel? It's what you want to do long term?
Yeah, I would love to get into the secondary school where you would be able to teach the Spanish every day, or at least teach the Spanish. But I like the teaching, and I would like to stay in this field, maybe go to a higher level. You know, who knows? But yeah, this teaching is for me. Not everybody wants to teach, but that's what I love, so I want to stay in the area for now.
So what is it you find stimulating about teaching, and why do you think you're suited for it, temperamentally?
Well, I'm kind of a clown, and the children like that. You have to, no, seriously, you have to make yourself silly sometimes to get over to the children. And in teaching, every day is different. Right now, I have 20 children in my class, so I have 20 different personalities. And every day, you can't have expectations because the children bring what happened at home. They bring everything to the classroom. So every day is dynamic. You have to just adjust. So there's never a dull, boring day in teaching. It changes, and come September, I'll get another set of personalities that I will have to deal with. And then now the children are changing, so you have to look for different ways to teach them. So being a clown and being silly is good, and the dynamicness of the classroom and the children, that's what keeps me interested. You teach the same thing over every year, but you have different children to teach it to, and you find more and new and interesting ways to teach the information.
Do you ever have any discipline issues?
Yes, especially teaching, not to put it down, but I'm teaching at Westbury Primary School, so they know the children come in with some personal issues sometimes. So if you, in the infants department, that's where I am, the children still believe that the teacher is in charge. They know, you understand, because it's in the classroom, the children they still listen to you, and if you give them a vexed look, they will still respond. But sometimes if I cannot deal with the issue in the classroom, you take it to the senior teacher, and if it is higher than that, then it goes to the principal. But generally, not too many issues that a stern look or taking away part of the break time or something like that would not fix.
Right, you have your strategies.
Yeah, you have a strategy.
Do you get any sort of training? People are always talking about attention deficit disorder and those kind of things, and dyslexia, and how it's a bad thing if these are identified late. Do you get any sort of training in identifying a child who maybe has some sort of developmental problem or learning disability?
Unfortunately, no. In the primary school, they sometimes have forums that you would get to go to, but there are so many teachers. One representative from the school would go, and sometimes they would come back and tell us what happened. But
Right.
in that situation, the ministry would encourage you to go and do probably a course. Earthston offers a lot of evening courses. So what you do is just sign up for an evening course and try to develop yourself on your own. I guess the ministry would love to do that, but as I said, the teachers, there are lots of teachers and there's economic costs, so they encourage you to go on your own
Right.
and study. So
But you have to take the initiative and do
yes,
that.
and I guess there's also principals could also do professional development within their own schools. My principal is starting to do that, but he's not doing that in the area of dealing with issues the children might have, but teaching strategies and that kind of thing. But eventually, I suppose he'll get to the point where he'll bring in professionals to talk to us about dealing with the issues the children might have. But as of this point, you have to go and study on your own.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the transition from being a primary to a secondary school teacher? Do you have a clear idea of how you might achieve that goal?
Wow. Oh, sending applications. Well, basically, I have a friend in secondary school, and I told her, well, could you keep an eye out for me? Because sometimes you have to know someone that might tell you, well, you know, there's a position opening, so could you apply? So I'm just sending out application forms and hoping that there's something that opens up for me. In terms of the teaching secondary school from primary, I don't know. I guess when I go in, I will figure it out, because they're a different set of students. They're old and they have their issues, but you adapt. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you keep your ear to the ground, and they're
Yeah.
not. These posts aren't regularly advertised on bulletin boards and
Well,
websites.
Not in primary school. I suppose if you, as I said, if you know somebody, will let you know, and their positions open in the newspaper. I usually look for them at the beginning of the school year. But what happens? Most of the positions in secondary school open as term positions. So sometimes I guess you don't want to take the risk of leaving
Right.
a year appointment to teach for a term, because sometimes you don't get back in.
Right.
Unfortunately, the teaching is tight right now, and sometimes they're not allowed positions. So for me, I don't want to say, but I don't like to take the risk of leaving my year for
Sure.
a term and then I'm home. So hoping for a year appointment in the secondary school, where then I can hopefully get to stay, be appointed to school and stay. But I just keep looking, checking the newspaper and asking people in the secondary school to give you a heads up when positions become available.
So it's always for a term or a year to start off with.
Yes. Well, you don't want to appoint a person to a position and then they're not the right fit. So usually...
We do that.
Well, oops. Marlon.
In the
No.
past, it's happened.
No, well, usually persons will go for a term's leave, maternity leave, so you go in. But sometimes if you're lucky, you get to stay on. You might not stay on in the position you were in. Suppose they're going for Spanish, there might be a vacancy, say for social studies, and you might go over, but you're there with the hope that you can teach the Spanish. So, but most of the time, having spoken to teachers that are in the secondary school, the positions don't usually be for a year. You start with a term, but sometimes if you're lucky and the person's retired, there's a position. But there's a lot of competition, so you have to be.
It's
Yeah.
tricky. There's quite a lot of uncertainty in the process, obviously.
Yes.
So how did you get your job in the beginning then? Was there, obviously you sent an application, but was there a long interview? Presumably there were lots of applicants for it.
Well, what happens in the primary school, you go fill out the form, you'll take in the copies of your certificates, and you just wait. So then I got a call and said, well, I need to come in for interview, and it's this group. You sit on this big table, and they're like almost 10 people asking all kind of questions. You're like, mercy, how am I going to get through this? So then you do the interview, and you say they will give you a call. I did my interview, and they called me back the next day, and I went to work the following day. So I was kind of lucky. I don't know how it is now, but you just fill out the form, and you call and make them miserable. School supervision, you call and make them miserable. Do you have any vacancies open? And maybe when you call, they say yes, or they say, well, we are working out the reassignments now, and hope. So that's it. You just fill out the form and call and hope that something becomes available. That's what I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Does anyone have any questions for Kerry at this point?
Oh, but I just have a comment.
Yeah, Glendon, if you can just run with the mic for, we'll get used to it. No, I think it's taking the sound, so I don't think it'll allow you.
Would you have to refresh your language skills in order to teach effectively at the secondary level? Because one was, not to sound offensive, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't been studying languages for a while, how do you think that you would be able to use those language skills effectively at secondary schools?
Well, what you have to do is you have to keep yourself refreshed. Read internet, go on into Spanish internet sites, try to talk. I try to talk to myself in Spanish. I don't know. Yes, you would have to refresh it.
Very good thing to do.
Yeah, when you go into the secondary school, you know the children are sharp, so you have to be on the game. So yes, if I'm going to secondary school to teach Spanish, I would want to keep myself abreast. I would probably, if I know beforehand, I would try to maybe do a course. I don't know. Venezuela Institute, I don't know, refresh myself, find somebody to talk to, take a trip, something to get the Spanish back up, but when you start back to use it, it comes back. It never truly leaves you. So once you get back into the situation of using it, it will come back. Yeah.
Take a trip's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like that, 'cause it gives you that
Yeah.
really kind of intense
Immersion.
immersion.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like a few days in Puerto Rico or something. But at least take a course is a good idea.
Yeah.
So something a little bit structured that makes you at least feel in yourself, okay, I've prepared myself now
Yeah.
to face these people who are going to try and catch me out.
Yes.
The teenagers. Any further questions for Kerry? Go ahead.
Just, Carrie, how do you hope your MA in Caribbean Studies is going to help you with future endeavors you might have?
Okay, well, as I said, I would love to get into the secondary school teaching Spanish. So I just actually did a course with Dr. Constant, teaching second and foreign languages. And it gave me a lot of skills that I would love to use in the Spanish classroom. So just the courses, they give you skills that you add to what you already have and use them in the classroom. And hopefully maybe I'll get to teaching second and foreign language, teaching English to speakers of other languages. Because who knows, I might leave the secondary school and go and teach in another country. I like the teaching area, but not necessarily I'm going to always stay in Barbados. There are other opportunities in teaching outside of Barbadian classroom. So I'm not going to limit myself to secondary school and never look for anything else. So I'll use the skills that I'm acquiring in the masters in whatever I do in the future.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bernadette, you have a question?
You do teach at secondary school level?
No, primary, but I'm
not yet.
hoping to get into the secondary school.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
perhaps the question is irrelevant, but for the others who do and who are going to address us, I just wanted to know what you thought of the teaching material you have to work with, the textbooks and so forth.
Oh.
For somebody who's teaching at secondary,
Oh, okay.
that's for later.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anyone.
Yeah.
I guess mine is not a question as much as it's just to follow up what you said in terms of being determined. You know, you're coming out of university and the jobs are scarce. You will hit a lot of blocks, but it is so important, as Carrie would have said, that you just have to be very persistent. But you know, in tying with this whole point is that the language really will keep you a step above, because you don't even know how many people really don't have any languages, and so you just have to try and push every strength that you have and just keep trying knock at every door. But the international organizations such as Hilton really are looking for very vibrant, determined persons that are innovative and persons that are willing to go above and beyond, and so that's where the volunteering in the in other areas as well helps too, because it shows that that person is willing to open themselves to any sort of experience and opportunity possible.
Just just before you ask your question, this is your chance for networking also. You must have realized that, huh? You can talk to Chris and Kerry.
Yeah, sorry, me again. Are there any teacher training programs for language, for students hoping to teach languages?
Not that I'm aware of specifically for language. You could do the diploma in education, and as I say, it would furnish you with skills that then you would apply to your language skills. It's not saying this program is for people that teach languages, but it's a general program, and then you take from it what you need to apply to your teaching of Spanish or French or whatever language you speak.
You did the diploma, right?
Yes, I did the diploma in education.
And it was
yes.
specifically directed towards primary school teaching
Well,
at the time? Or?
As I'm in primary school, I did the diploma for primary school, but there's one for secondary school as well.
Right.
But I could use the primary. I wouldn't have to retrain when I go into the secondary school because the principles are basically the same. But you do the diploma in education for teaching, and the courses that Erdeston would offer on an evening, they're reading courses and different courses, and you take those skills and apply it to your language teaching.
I'm just going to say something about Kerry being a clown, and a couple of other things that Chris also mentioned about being determined, vibrant, and about his own good fit with the hospitality industry, which wasn't something that he specifically studied to work in or knew that he was going to like even. And that's the whole issue of temperament. You know, we tend to think that certain types of studies fit with certain types of career, but at least equally important is what your own assessment of what your temperament is. And there are various online tools and professional sources where you can get some kind of personality test that will assess your temperament in a fairly crude way often, but it'll give you some idea of what kind of temperament you have. And that's a very important variable, I think, because it also fits in with what we've been saying about trying out things that you don't necessarily know if you're going to like or whether you're going to be good at. Stumble in and fail at a few jobs. Yeah, we, the older amongst us here, have some horror stories about grim jobs we were not suited for. And those experiences are incredibly useful because you can then exclude them. You know, because I had this image of myself when I was like your age as looking something like Chris with a suit on and looking very sharp and being a bit of a man about town and somebody who understood the corporate world. And, you know, that really wasn't me, but it was what I thought I might like to do, right? So I tried to work in an office environment I lasted about 3 months in 2 different offices, about 6 weeks each. And I hated it. And that was incredibly useful because push that aside, go and do something else with yourself because you don't like it and you're not good at it. And, you know, I now don't have any kind of hankerings of having a different sort of career that I might have had I not tried it and failed at it. So, you know, by all means stumble into things and mess it up and come out and start again, you know. If you mess it up that badly, the chances are you aren't burning any bridges. You weren't suited for that anyway. Anyone you've insulted or disappointed is not going to need to be impressed by you in the future anyway. So what it doesn't mean, temperament, necessarily, is you must be an extrovert. Doesn't mean that, right? Introverts are better at some types of jobs. So you don't have to worry about whether you're an outgoing person. You know, it probably helps if you're outgoing for Chris's job to some extent, and for Juliet's job, for example, and all of them. But there are other very successful careers and extremely successful, rich people who define themselves as introverts. People like Bill Gates, for example, who is a classic introvert. And there are certainly careers in languages and things like translating and so forth that a more introverted personality is actually an advantage for. So you mustn't worry about being one temperament or another. It's just important to know yourself in order to start fitting yourself to certain environments. And, you know, if you go into your work environment and you just hate it, you find you don't like the other people around you, they don't seem to be people like you, or you find it very exhausting. You know, I was in an open plan office, And I'm basically introverted, and I like to shut myself away. If I have lots of stimulus, I get tired very quickly. And so I would just be exhausted doing this, with people shouting over me and things, and, things going on. A very trendy office I was in with a basketball hoop in the corner and stuff. And I hated it. I wanted to crawl into a hole, I'd go and hide in the bathrooms. And, it was a good lesson for me, that. So the environment you work in is important too. You shouldn't be unhappy in your workplace, but it's okay to go and do some things that make you a bit unhappy so that you can exclude them and move on. Without more ado, we will now go on to Chantal Purcell, who works with Gildan Activewear. Thank you very much, Kerry. Chris has to leave now. He's working today. Final round of applause for him. Thank you so much. Sorry, were you coming back?
I was.
I thought you were leaving. Excuse me. Victor Simpson is going to speak with Chantal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Craig. Good morning to everyone. And it really is a pleasure to see you all here, some faces that I don't know, actually. And when I introduced myself to Christopher earlier, I said, I never taught you. And of course I never did, because he was doing French. I was struck by what Dr. Craig was saying just now about temperament fitting with jobs and so on. And as he said that, I remembered something that is not the same thing, but as I look out on all of you, graduates and potential graduates in modern languages, I remember a conversation I had with one of my colleagues here, who has since retired after teaching here for more than 30 years. He did not teach in the area of foreign languages, but he's had lots of experiences in the university, so he understands some things. And I remember him telling me that historically it has been found that, at least within the Faculty of Humanities, the language students, the foreign language students, tend to be, generally speaking, the brighter students. Now, you might not think that of yourself, but I think that's something for you that's worth you thinking about when perhaps you may not be as satisfied as you would like to be at your performance in some area. It seems to me that one of the most challenging programs we can do here is this double major in French and Spanish. And it is the only program that I know where you don't have scope to do electives. You just have to be grinding down all the time. And that takes something. So if you want to feel discouraged sometimes at what's happening, remember that you are among the brightest, and that you are more likely to succeed than otherwise. Morning, Chantal. I remember teaching you.
Yes.
And it is my job to encourage you to share your experiences with this group. I noticed that you have quite an interesting job title: Coordinator, International Markets, Trade Shows. Most of us probably don't know what that means. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is to tell us, what is this job that you have?
Well, basically it's a fancy title for a marketing coordinator, basically. Gildan has different markets that it caters to, and part of my job is to interact with the different markets. So there's Asia, there's Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada, the USA, and I have to basically coordinate projects that they may want done and filter them into our department and to make sure they get done for them. And then I also look after the trade shows not for each of those markets, but kind of coordinate the goings on of the trade shows for them.
Quite interesting.
Yes.
Is there anything about your job that you don't like?
Not really don't like. Let's see how to put it. There are lots of, it would work if things could go smoother. Having to do with so many markets, there's so many people that want things done, and it seems to happen all at the same time. So it would help if they could actually, if they knew in advance, then they could, you know, things don't ever go the way they're supposed to go. If the people knew in advance what they wanted and give us a decent time frame, then we could work with them. But usually everything is like a rush, and it kind of makes you go like all crazy, you know. In January, for example, we have to put on like 4 trade shows in 3 different markets, and it's kind of hectic because you're not even in Barbados, you're actually somewhere else in the world in a different time zone dealing with something that's happening in Australia. And it's kind of crazy because to think of the time that you have to respond to the people in Australia or New Zealand, you're in California where you're 4 hours behind Barbados, so already it's like a different, you're battling with time, basically.
That sounds exciting, though.
It does, but it gets tiring because there's no sleep.
Okay.
So.
You had difficulty identifying what you didn't like about the job, which to me suggests that there must be a whole lot about the job that you like.
There is. I get to meet a lot of new people. I travel to different places, so I've been all across the USA. I go to Mexico, met lots of people there, not only from Mexico, but from different parts of Latin America. I've been to Europe with the company as well on a trade show, met lots of different people, had to use my French, which was very limited. It was because I was going to get lost, so I had to ask where the hotel was. Haven't been to Asia, Australia, or New Zealand yet. Don't know if there's an opportunity to do that, but I have met them. They have come to Barbados and I've met them. So there's a whole lot of interesting stuff. You get to meet new people, new personalities. So.
You want to switch jobs?
No.
To what extent do you find that your training in language helps you to do your job more effectively?
Let's see. Well, with Mexico, I can say that it was easier to be able to speak to them. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever met Mexicans, but the Spanish we know, when you actually speak to a Mexican, it just is very different, and then they have different accents depending on which part of Mexico they're from. So it takes a bit of time, but it's actually easier to talk to them about certain things. Part of my job, I have to interact with the booth builders, the persons who build the stands. So it helps that I was able to speak Spanish as opposed to my other colleagues who don't speak a language. I was able to speak to them and to get certain things that we wanted implemented in the booth done, so it was easier to have that. Even in the USA, when we go to shows, there are lots of Latin Americans that actually live in the US, and because no one else in the booth speaks Spanish, they usually have to call on me to try to translate what the other person is saying. So
everything you have said so far sounds real exciting.
It can be, but it's also tiring because imagine having to travel to all those different places and then you end up in a different time zone, and then you kind of have to, because when you get there, then you have to work within the next day, and sometimes flights may be delayed, you may not get to the location on time. We may have forgotten to print something when we actually show up at the stand, it's not there, and then you have to go and work overtime to try to find someone to actually get it done for you. So it's exciting, but it's tiring.
Cast your mind back a few years sitting in this 3rd year literature class?
No.
What were your thoughts then, apart from getting out of UE? What were your thoughts then as far as a possible career?
No offense, Carrie, but it wasn't teaching. For sure. I know that I don't have the personality to stand up there and teach anyone. So I figured whatever I did, I wanted to use my language, but still work in a corporate environment. So even if it meant that I had to go to another country and probably live in another live in a Spanish-speaking country, speak Spanish, but use my English, then whatever it was, it just wasn't teaching.
So you didn't have specific career goals at that time?
No. At that time, I was actually a customer service rep at Gildan. So from that experience, I figured that I liked what I was doing, working in the environment, and I was getting to use my Spanish a little bit, and I figured that whatever I did, I wanted to be in the corporate environment, at least interacting with people and using my language if I had to. But I wasn't sure what I wanted to do exactly.
What would you say were some of the main skills or attributes that you had to bring to bear to get you from that temporary or part-time job at Gildan in the last year of school to where you are now, seemingly quite settled in this job?
Well, like Christopher mentioned before, wanted to get out there and try new things, being persistent and being determined to want to experience new roles. So when I applied for the marketing position, I knew nothing about marketing. Actually, marketing was one of the courses that I got the lowest grade in, and I was surprised that I actually got in to do marketing because I'm doing my MSc in marketing, and I was actually surprised that I was able to get in to do it, because when I showed them the transcript, I was like, yeah. But I think you have to be wanting to be a person who wants to actually experience new things, wants to interact with different people and learn stuff. So that's what I was interested in, and I went for it.
Just now I asked you to look back 4 or 5 years in your last year at school. Look forward 5 or 10 years. Where do you see yourself career-wise?
I don't know. I actually have a few things I'm thinking about doing. It may not necessarily mean that I'll be still at Gildan, or it could mean that I'm still at Gildan, possibly in a different role. From studying the master's in marketing, I realized that I really do want to get back into languages as well. So maybe I might go back and do some further studies in languages. Maybe translation studies or something like that, interpreting something. And I also always wanted to work in the UN, and I know that there's an opportunity. The UN is actually coming back to Barbados to recruit this year, so maybe I might try that out.
Yeah. October? December?
I think.
Maybe October or December, towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
We're doing a huge recruitment.
Oh, that's quite interesting. So you're looking at a number of options, but
Yeah.
I don't think that it is lost on us the fact that you emphasize your desire to get involved in language once again. That's good. What contribution do you think your experience as a language student has made to where you are now and what you have accomplished in the last year since you have left UE? Do you see anything that you gain by being a language student? Not even just the specific language itself, but the process of being a language student for 5 years, 4 years, whatever, how that influences and helps you now in the career that you are in.
I think the other two mentioned it before. Having a language, most people don't have a language. So when you actually apply for a job and people see that you have a language, it helps. They think that you are a well-rounded person, I guess, with having a language, because learning to speak everything that you know in English in another language is difficult. It's hard. So actually having that skill has helped. I find I have VPs who call me asking me to translate stuff like on the spot because they don't have another language and they're in the middle of a conference call and someone said something and they need to try to figure out what it is that they're saying. So I think that having the language skill really helps. It can help you in all kinds of situations. So.
So my last question.
Companies know that they need language competence among their staff, but notoriously refuse to ascribe any importance at all to the skill. And you refer to the lack of language competence among your colleagues. I wonder, in the job description that you replied to, was language competence a specific component?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, when I applied for the customer service rep, I was applying for the European division. So there was one of the skill sets was that you needed to speak either Spanish or French. And it so happens that when I was interviewing another colleague of mine who went to school at UE as well, she was applying for the French role and I spoke Spanish, so I applied for the Spanish role and we got it. They actually applied recently. I don't think anybody speaks German, but they had a advertisement in the paper recently for somebody who speaks German, because we recently acquired a company that's German based and they need someone to be able to interact with those customers.
So now my last question, Chantal. You look out here at all these graduates and potential graduates in the field of language. What would be your final words of advice, especially to those who are still students?
Don't ever feel like you have to do something that you don't want to do. If it's something that you really have your heart set on, go ahead and do it. You can try to fit language into anywhere, any situation, and yeah, just be the best at what you do.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments on what Chantal has been saying? There must be.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things to say about Chantal. One thing is about, her low grade in marketing. It's funny how that becomes unimportant after a while. You may think that your transcript is there forever and you have to send it to people and they scrutinize it and say, okay, this person is good at this and bad at this based on this piece of paper for the rest of your life. But it's not quite like that at all, is it? Right? She applied to do an MSc in marketing and she sent her transcript and they probably observed that she didn't have a stellar grade in the one undergraduate course she'd done in marketing. But it didn't matter because clearly she was getting references from her employers saying that she had held down a difficult and challenging job that was relevant to the field, that she had a whole number of skills. And most institutions and employers are sensitive to the fact that people do develop and the fact that there can be personality clashes with members of staff. You might dislike an academic subject, but still be good at the professional business of that subject. So you don't have to think that your transcript dooms you to particular pathways, because it doesn't. You can certainly overcome that. The other thing is that Chantal lived in Cuba for how long? For 2 years before she came to UE. And we didn't mention that, but I think it's important to mention that because she is somebody who did some immersion, engaged with another culture, a very different culture from our own culture. And I'm sure that the experience of dealing with that difference and otherness has helped her to deal with people from very different cultural backgrounds to her own when she's coordinating and dealing with fellow professionals in different parts of the world. I would assume that's the case, right? Thank you very much. Okay, now we have Juliette Morn, who has another exciting job description, freelance social development consultant. She's going to give us a presentation and tell us all about that and how she got to become it. Thanks, Juliette.
So I have a disclaimer. I don't work in an office most of the time, and my career development has been quite schizophrenic and very unconventional. So I'm going to share my journey and the tips that I've learned along the way to make myself sustainable, which is very important. And of course, allow you some options in shaping your own career development, especially utilizing language. So I'm a freelance social development consultant. And I also say I'm a budding Caribbean lifestyle entrepreneur. I made all of this up. Because for a long time, people used to say, Juliette, so what are you doing now? And what do you do? And I used to stop and be like, well, I'm doing a lot of things. Right? So sometimes I am a project manager or a coordinator. I am a proposal writer sometimes, a facilitator, international election observer. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. A translator or an editor. I don't know if you've ever read any publications coming out of some of the organizations that are predominantly Latin American, and you read it in English and you're like, if this was initially in Spanish, you can so tell because of the long sentences that, kind of equate a paragraph. So I tend to clean up some of those things from time to time. A whisperer, apparently it's called, or an interpreter. And, workshops, conferences, and of course, being a meeting representative, some of the NGOs that I'm affiliated with. All right, so I'm going to share a few of the tips that I have learned and hopefully inspire you from my unemployment to where I am today. It has been a very challenging journey, to be very honest, because of the boom and bust. Anybody that's consulting would know about this. So at one point, you have this wonderful project and you're getting paid and it's all fabulous. And then that finishes and it's like, what am I going to do next? And then you go into poverty again. And then, so it's up and down and up and down. And it's very challenging. So that's the bad part. But the good part is that, like this year alone, I started off finishing up a project at UNDP. The minute I finished that, I was monitoring and evaluating a project on behalf of one of the departments of the OAS, the Organization of American States. The minute that finished, I was writing the report in Washington because my cousin, who was a neurologist, just had a baby and she had to rush back to work. So while I was finishing that report, I was helping her mind her child and getting paid with it. And I connected with some colleagues that I knew with the election monitoring. They were like, hey, do you want to come to Paraguay? And I was like, sure. So that finished and I was in Paraguay. I took a week off, went to New York and New Jersey, and on the way back on the plane, they were like, oh, Juliette, we had to contact you. We've got a workshop like this week. Do you want to come and help us out? I was like, yeah, I'm not busy. And so I am all of a sudden coordinating some meeting, last minute, very high profile, Prime Minister, the head of the Organization of the American States in Sulsa, who, if I were in Mexico, I wouldn't even be able to touch him. And in Barbados, he's like, hey, how are you? And swimming in the pool, right? So for me, I love I love my life. It's very dramatic. It's very dynamic, but you know, hey. So how did I achieve that? Oh wait, hold on. I just want to say, I'm going to talk about that top picture in a moment. I'm of the philosophy that wherever my laptop is, I'm at work and I'm in the office, right? And that's a TEDx. Do you know TEDx Youth at Bridgetown? Hey, selfish plug. No? Anyway, I was a speaker speaking on something very similar, actually, on my unconventional life. Hold on, and that's the wrong way. Okay, so one of the first lessons that I learned, right, was about doing something, right? And I love that quote over there. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. Why? Because I graduated from the Spanish degree not knowing what I wanted to do. And being the person that I am, I took advantage of the opportunity to travel to London. At the time, you had a working holidaymaker's visa, I believe it was called, where you could work for 2 years and travel around and they wouldn't bother you and you can get a job. And I was like, great, I'm going to London to find myself. And so I did hospitality, hated it. I went into some publishing training, thinking that was all right. I finally landed a job in a charity and I thought, this is great. I love development. I want to go save the world. And then my time came to an end and I was back in Barbados, right? And over the last, I guess, 6-7 years, I've had to start to create and build my career and my skills. All right. So I would share with you, like, do something, anything. We were talking about volunteerism. It was, without volunteerism, I don't know where I would be. That's the honest truth. Like, if you start a job, you know, as an admin, the ability to jump from admin to, I don't know, a coordinator or a manager in a year span is almost impossible. But you can do it as a volunteer. Right? So I would say go out, volunteer. There's all sorts of stuff. There's online volunteerism, go on UN, volunteer. You know, there's all sorts of opportunities. Do it tomorrow. Don't wait until you graduate. Do it like all now. You should be racking up your CV, writing in everything that you're going in, because when an employer comes to you or even a client, they want to know what you can achieve. So volunteer, take a gap year. I did. You went to study in Cuba, didn't you? She studied. Before I started the degree program, actually, I was in Dominican Republic for a year. I remember when we were in second year. Did you all go to Colombia? Did they go to Colombia? Did anybody go to Colombia? Y'all did not go to Colombia. I spent my 21st birthday in Villa de Leyva in Colombia. It was amazing, and you missed out a wonderful opportunity to go. I love that country. I ended up going to observe their election 2010 for the Segunda Vuelta. Yes, I was in Cauca. They sent me to Popayán. And it was amazing. I fell in love with Bogota. I fell in love with the food, as I usually do in Latin America. Start your own business. Hey, my flop, who cares? You started your own business. Give yourself a crazy title and be like, yeah, I'm doing this. You never know, you know what I mean? This is something to fill in those gaps that when somebody sees you, it's like, I haven't been sitting down for 6 months doing nothing. Like, hey, this is what I've been trying to achieve. I failed and this is what I learned, you know? And people like that. People dig that. And once you're doing something, people will automatically go like, hey, I saw you on X. Can you come and work for me? And you're like, oh, I'm running a business, but okay. Right? And as I said, don't be afraid to create a job where none exists, and live your passion. I think it was Confucius that said, love what you do and you will never have to work a day in your life. And it's so true. Work is always going to be hard. It's always going to be challenging. But when you love it, like at the core of it, when you love it, it really does get you through the day. All right, lesson 2 is carpe diem, seizing your opportunities. So I wanted to thank Dr. Craig because, and this is an example of seizing the opportunities. When I came back from the UK again, looking for this miraculous job in a charity where I'll be off saving the world, and it just never ended up like that. I went to visit my uncle who worked in humanities, and Dr. Craig comes out of his office and he says, Juliet, what are you doing? I said, well, nothing much. I'm trying to save the world. He says, do you want to go to Nicaragua? I was like, Nicaragua? Sure, why not? And he was like, you just got to fill out a few forms and what's not. Now, I'm saying this, right, because a lot of people stop. They're like, Nicaragua? What is Nicaragua for? And, oh, it's with the OAS, and they got all scared. I know, because I have reached out to French students, and I said, listen, they're looking for people to go to Haiti. Just send in something. It might not come through, but just send it in. You never know. But I took that opportunity. It was, I don't know if you all know Andrea, but Andrea's also another student. We both took the opportunity. We were the only Caribbean people, right? I think it was about 60 or 70 youth observers from throughout Latin America. We were the only Caribbean Spanish people out of that, 2 of us. That was it in the English-speaking Caribbean, right? That was in 2006. That was my first mission in Nicaragua. And I have done, I think it's about 11 with the OAS and 1 with the Commonwealth Secretariat in Tanzania. Right? And that was just by saying, yeah, sure, Dr. Craig, send me it. You know what I mean? Sending it in. I swear I didn't even fill in the whole thing. They were like, hey, you're Caribbean, you speak Spanish, we don't know you, come. And I'm saying this because later on I was able to, when I was, I'll talk about my master's in a minute, but when I was writing my report for my master's, I ended up interning with the same department that does the elections while I was writing my paper. And I came into contact with a lot of people that were like, hey, you know, Caribbean people don't seem to, number one, speak Spanish. And if they do, well, we don't know them. Like, what are they doing? What are their interests? They're not putting themselves forward. And let me tell you something, right? Latin Americans are not afraid to speak on their own behalf. They're not afraid to push themselves. And in our region, especially as it relates to international relations, we need to exert ourselves more because we are part of the Latin American Caribbean region with the US and stuff, and the ability to speak the multiple languages is currency, okay? I've become almost a contact person, if you will, in some departments. It's like, Juliette is the default. Like, can she do it? I don't know, ask her. You know, simply because they know that they can communicate. They can send me an email in Spanish, full stop. I might be working in English, but the mere fact that I can communicate with them and they feel comfortable in doing so, bam. All right. Build and manage your networks, which brings me to this point. I can do a whole session on networking. Networking is an art, read about it. You don't need to be an extrovert, although it does help. I'm one, right? But networking is the currency. To me, this is one of the most important. It's all about who you know and who knows you. It's real. Because at least in my field, especially with consultants and stuff, people literally decide they have the budget for something, 2 weeks, a week, a few days. They need somebody. They may need 3 CVs to pull just to make the little thing. And they're like, who do I call? And you want the first person that they think about to be you, right? The other thing about networking is being able to link your networks. Because all of a sudden you become that go-to person. Oh, you know, I need X. Can I find it? You know, and I love that. This picture, actually, y'all are on Facebook, so y'all might know. Y'all on Facebook? You might know, like, this is generated. This was done since 2011, right? I remember I wanted to see where my network was, because I love that. My network was, and that was in 2011. I'm sure it's amended slightly since then. But, you know, being able to say, yeah, I know people in South America. I know people in Asia. I mean, it's currency. It's a global society, and you need to be able to manage that properly. All right, stay hungry for knowledge. My BA in Spanish. Okay, I actually started off studying psychology. And somehow the psychology was dropped and I ended up with Spanish, right? And I loved it, don't get me wrong. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my experience, but I came out, and especially wanting to go into development, when I asked people like, okay, so what do I need to do? They were like, well, what do you study? And I was like, I have a BA in Spanish. And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, I had aspirations of being a consultant with the UN, right? Now I do that now. But at the time it was like, how do I navigate from a simple degree that I haven't double majored or anything, right, to actually having people send me terms of reference and saying, we would love you to submit an expression of interest. I didn't even know, right? So then obviously volunteering, you're taking your short courses. They had a Summer Institute for Gender and Development. Hey, signed up for that. There was a rapporteuring course. Hey, signed up for that. Any online courses, I was there, right? I actually decided to do my master's when I was working a year later in the United Nations. And And I couldn't get into a UK university, but I stumbled on an MSc, a Master of Science in Integration Studies. What's that? It is a mixture of international relations with a focus on regional integration agreements, right? So I started studying about trade, about governance, how countries, link together, CARICOM, Mercosur, European Union, all that kind of stuff. It was great. I thought I was going to end up in trade, to be honest, but no. But I would urge you to do that. Like, always stay current. You have to research. Number one, if you're in networks, I stalk people. Like, I have no shame in it. I meet you, and I want to know who you are. I'm going to go on. I'm going to Google you. I want to see what you did. I mean, for example, when I was writing my paper, right, there was one article that I read that allowed me to choose what I was going to focus on. And the gentleman that wrote it was in D.C., so brilliant. I was interning in the OAS in DC. I knew everything about it. I highlighted everything. I started to network so that I could get to interview him for my paper, right? I missed the opportunity to do so, right? And this is, y'all should really look into PR and management and all that kind of stuff. This man was walking somewhere. I scaled chairs. I swear I scaled chairs. And grabbed onto this man's hand and started smiling and shaking his hand. I'm like, hi, I'm Juliet. Listen, I would not let go until this man agreed to be my interviewee for my paper. I called the secretary. He gave me half an hour. Right? I said, all right. I sat down there. An hour and a half later, I was walking out of that office. Why? Because I was able to talk to him about, okay, well, this is what your work is, this is what I admire, this is thing, be critical, all that kind of stuff. That type of currency and that connection, you can't pay for. You have to know how to do it. But stay hungry for knowledge. Always do everything. Social media, whatever's new, because everything is very, very connected. So that's how you think. All right, and my last lesson is to promote yourself. No one's gonna know who you are unless you put yourself out there, right? And this is very hard. Even for me as an extrovert, every time I press post on one of the few blog posts that I write, I cringe, all right? My friends encouraged me to do TEDx Youth at Bridgetown thing. It's on YouTube. I cringe. I couldn't watch it for 2 years. So like, even as an extrovert, it's very, very, very hard, but it's something that you have to do. We're living in a digital age. We live in a social media age. Make sure I have a proper email account with your name, not Bootylicious65. You know what I mean? If you do like to write and you're a language student, how about writing in both languages? How about submitting articles and stuff for magazines and everything? They may not pay you, but it's something that you have to add to your portfolio, and it starts to expand your network, even if it's virtually, right? So promote yourself. Be vocal about what your achievements are and what you're good at. People love confidence, right? So they're going to just be attracted to that, right? And as I said, actively manage your personal brand. Me as well, once you establish your networks and stuff, it's always good to get yourself in media. So I don't shy away from it, but I manage that as well. All right, so my closing thoughts are this. Language plus your skills plus your networks equals maximum career potential. So is it relevant? It is very relevant, especially if it's alongside something that you're passionate about and that you can do, right? And again, your networks, and I mean, the possibilities are endless. I use it informally. I use language formally. I would love to increase my capacity because I've been shying away to, in facilitation and stuff that I've been asked, and I'm like, no, but there's just so much to do. I remember I was in Cuba with a group from the Barbados Photographic Society, and I was the only one that could speak the language. And these people are just like, Julia, I want to go and buy art, or I want to think, could you come and negotiate for me? I mean, this is a job, yeah. I feel like I should start charging. I'm just saying, there's so many little things that whilst you are studying, you can be doing. For example, we were talking about managing the master's degree and the job. Kudos to you. Because I was at the UN, I was doing my master's, and it was them, UE, or my sanity. Here, I had to drop one. I was frazzled. I had no child. Do you understand? So what did I do? I dropped it and I started utilizing some of the other skills to supplement. So my rapporteuring that I took up because, right, ended up getting me enough money to sustain myself. You understand what I mean? So be really creative with your creative and enjoy it. Enjoy the experience. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Juliet?
What time is it? Good morning. You mentioned about volunteerism, and networking and stuff like that. For the non-Barbadian students, I know a lot of people would say, do some volunteering, go somewhere. But many of us have student loans to pay as soon as we finish. You have 6 months window probably, and bam, into a student loan. So the idea of volunteerism sounds awesome, but what would your advice be to somebody like that who really wants to do something like that, but is faced with, okay, I have a student loan to pay as soon as I'm finished here?
Well, I'm not telling you don't apply for jobs. But it's, I find that once you're out there working, people are more likely to see that you're out there working and see what your skill set is. You're able to up your CV rather than sit at home, you know what I mean? Kind of just staring at a screen. The other thing is that you should be doing it all now. If I had the opportunity to go back, I would be volunteering in the way that I volunteered after my degree, with the same fervor. Like there's so much I was able to achieve in such a short time, right? That then paid off in the amount I was able to charge. So it is, to me, if you can find the time, to me, there's no excuse. You should be able to find the time. There's online volunteering. If you're home and you're trying to manage both, you don't have to do a whole year program. It could be weekend volunteering. It could be anything that you want to contribute on your skills, all right? Yeah.
Could you just wait for a second?
Hi, good morning. So in terms of the volunteering, where should I look as a student, as a graduate? What avenues, what areas should I point myself?
It depends on what your interest is. I remember my experience was this. When I came back and I was unemployed and very frustrated and had no money, but I knew that I needed to get the experience to get into development. At first, I didn't know where to go. So I went through the business authority and I called up all the numbers in the back and emailed all the numbers, sent them my little basic CV, and I said, if you have any volunteering or what's not. My mother saw somebody else and they were like, okay, well, ask around. I ended up getting, just through the connections, through networking, that's one option. And I ended up getting something for a month. I moved down to a more central area by one of my family members, and I walked every day of that month for the half day to go and volunteer. 2-3 months later, I ended up having a post at the United Nations in a way that I could not have done because the person that I was working under ended up going there and they liked how I worked. Okay. Other ways to do it, again, there's online volunteerism now with the social media. You could volunteer your services in translation, for example. That builds credibility, it builds experience. You could, I'm a fan of Barbados Youth Development Council. I was on their advisory board and stuff, but I love them because they're dynamic and you can do so much with it. I mean, I remember one time I was like, let's do a project, let's bid for a project. And they were like, sure, no problem. I wrote up a whole proposal on their behalf. We did all this kind of stuff. We mobilized money. I got paid. I'm just saying. Like, there's a lot of creative ways. You know what I mean? There's a lot of creative ways of making your mark, building your experience, and even requesting or negotiating a little bit of a stipend so you're not hungry, which I advocate for as well. So check out your local community, whatever.
I think one thing we could try to do as part of the follow-up to the event is try and pull together some ideas about how to volunteer in a way that might be particularly suitable for somebody with the types of skills that you have, so that we can give people some ideas about who to call and where to send their CV and so forth, just to make it a little bit less. Because Juliet's very good at networking, you can imagine, you can see that, right? Others of you may need a little bit more guidance. She has you saw her network, she has an incredible kind of scattershot personality where she'll do anything, and she's very difficult to say no to, right? She has a very good entrepreneurial personality, because if she's not going to charm you into saying yes, then she's going to steamroller over you. You get the impression, right? So if you're, because she's very, very energetic. So if you're somebody who's organizing some kind of process or needs something doing, then she's obviously a good person to call. She's not going to call you up and say, I had a problem with so-and-so who wouldn't let me. No, she's going to come back after a couple of days and say, I did it. It's done, right? And that's a very good, the other thing about her personality, which I think is very good for an entrepreneurial kind of person, is that she's very optimistic. And also, she tolerates ambiguity and uncertainty very well, right? So I knew when otherwise you wouldn't go to Nicaragua when you didn't know what the hell was going on, right? Most people, as you say, would say, well, tell me what it's about, and I'll think about it. Yeah. I said, you want to go to Nicaragua on an election monitor? You didn't know what that was. You just said, yes, all right then. Yeah. Because you weren't busy at the time.
And it's true, because I am the person that they send to remote places. Like Paraguay, there was like no one but cows, like, I sent me to I'm being horrible. There were like very small communities where, and they know that I wouldn't complain about those things. I find those things exciting. So like, being able to use your personality is great. Dr. Craig, I remember when I was at the OAS, they talked about the MOAS. For people that are interested in international relations, they spoke about the model OAS. Have you heard about it?
No.
I met the woman that was trying to coordinate it, and they do it at least once a year. And she was saying that the Caribbean participation was really low.
Okay.
And that she was in discussions with UE. So I don't know who she was in discussions with UE with.
Well, perhaps you can be in discussions with me about it.
Exactly. So I'm just saying another point is to like harass Dr. Craig.
Not just me. Not just me.
And please take advantage. I mean, like it's really disheartening that you didn't go to Colombia. You missed a fantastic experience. So please just seize them and find people. Listen, how old are you? You see, 20s, I won't go back to my 20s, right? I want to go back to my 20s. Like, I would just pay to go back to my 20s. There are so many people that are willing to invest in you. Go on Google, set up, I'd even put it up there. We have, within my little network, we have this global change agent group Gmail group that we set up, and we just post things to each other. Like, just apply. I'm telling you, people will pay for your training. They'll, just look around. It's there.
Yeah, I was just saying earlier that Juliet tolerates ambiguity and uncertainty very well, and that is an important thing to have if your income is going to be irregular. When my brief period as a freelance teacher and translator, I wasn't good at that. I was fine when I had jobs coming in, but in those periods where there was a bit of a fallow phase and I wasn't sure where the next money was coming from, I would just kind of sit there and stare at the bills wide-eyed, feeling panicky, and I would really have to push myself to get out there and find the next thing to do. So you have got to be somebody who's prepared to not have a fixed calendar for the next even 6 months a year. There are things on it, but you fill in other things as you go along. Some people are very good at tolerating that kind of uncertainty, and other people prefer something that is more regular. So you need to ask yourself that question. Are you someone who wants a salary, or are you somebody who is okay taking life as it comes, being very, very curious, and having a very exciting lifestyle, but sometimes not much money at the beginning? I'm sure Juliet's going to be very rich and successful. It has to happen. Who's going to stand in her way? I'm sure, yeah. So, moving on now, our final presenter before the break is Miss Antonia Hines, who's the Guest Relations Manager at Tamarind Hotel.
All right, good morning, everyone. Still morning. Good. All right, I'm Antonia. I'm currently the guest relations manager at Tamarind Hotel. I'm not sure how I can top Juliet's presentation. She has a lot of energy, but I'll try my best. Keep you interested. All right, so of course, persons may want to know when they hear the title guest relations, what does it really involve? And no, it's not just managing the relationships with the guests. I get that a lot, but it's not just that, it's a lot more. As guest relations manager, I also do the role of duty manager whenever I'm at the hotel, and I would have outlined a couple of the roles in terms of what each duty pretty much entails. Now, as guest relations and duty manager, of course, are you familiar with the Tamarind Hotel? Anyone? Well, it used to be Tamarind Cove, but it's now Tamarind. So I would have been there just about 2 years. And as guest relations / duty manager, these are some of the things that I'm responsible for. So I need to develop and maintain relationships both internally and externally with our guests, because it's not only, some persons think that guests just mean persons that arrive on a plane or arrive on a cruise ship, but it's actually also your external customers, locals as well, because I'm sure you've all heard of staycations, most of you. I'm not sure if any of you have actually done them, but that's also another aspect. So it's not only the foreign tourist, but actually your local tourists as well. I also have to respond to any problems or potential problems that could affect a customer, because as guest relations and as duty manager, you're responsible for ensuring that the entire process at the hotel runs as it should. I also observe and manage all of the hotel operations on a daily basis. So I'm pretty much the hotel manager. Of course, in the structure you have, your general manager, your deputy, etc. But the duty manager also plays a very big role in that you're the one that's on the ground. I'm not only dealing with the guests within the hotel, I'm also dealing with staff as well. And I'm a pretty small person, kind of short, and can be underestimated sometimes. But yeah, not to be played with. I'm also responsible for conducting site inspections. This it has a little bit of the marketing aspect with it, in that, of course, hotels operate on occupancy, where you can't function unless you have persons in your hotel. We are there to serve persons who decide to come to Barbados, to Tamarind on a holiday, because, of course, they can go anywhere in the world. As Chris would have said when he was here earlier, you can go anywhere in the world. You can go, even if you choose Barbados, you don't necessarily have to stay at Tamarind. You can stay at Hilton, for example. But in terms of how the site inspections work, it's my responsibility that when we have persons who come to the hotel for potential business, they may be thinking of having a group, they may be thinking of doing something special, and maybe considering your hotel as some place that they may want these persons to stay. So when they come, you pretty much have to try to sell the hotel to them, to have them make that ultimate decision that they will be going with you. So there's a lot of customer relations, a lot of marketing as well, that goes into being the guest relations person. Of course, I also manage the concierge department in the hotel. It's a very small department. I always get a lot of slack because there are really only 3 people in the department. Myself, the full-time concierge, and then someone who fills in when she's off. And so they really tell me I don't really have a department a lot, but it still is a very important role, because like guest relations, concierge is also a very important person in the hotel industry, in that you are there to provide experiences for guests. They come to you because they trust your knowledge, they trust that you know what is best and that you wouldn't put them wrong. So it's also a very important role, and managing that process, of course, takes patience, but it's also quite a rewarding experience. I don't know, you can probably speak to my concierges and they might tell you Hopefully they'll tell you that they enjoy working with me. And then of course, generally, I attend meetings, all the other stuff that comes along with working in the hotel. Now, in terms of what I like or don't like about the job, I'll start with what I don't like. There's only one thing, and that's long hours. We've had a conversation not too long ago, Isabel and I, about the long hours that I put in. Sometimes I work 13 hours a day. Sometimes I have to work 6 days a week, depending on how busy you are, because of course it does fluctuate. Occupancy fluctuates. You have different priorities, etc., that you have to kind of plan for. In terms of what I like, I do love the interaction with different persons throughout the world. I know we would have heard persons going to Cuba, Europe, etc. I myself also would have done something very similar. I lived in Germany for a while, so I know in terms of that, Gildan, German, yeah. I do speak German. I obviously would have done my BA in French here at UE. I also speak Italian and Spanish as well. So, well, not perfectly Spanish, but that's the weakest of them. But yeah, I also do that. And so I do love the interaction in that you have the ability to communicate with persons from throughout the world, really. And so much so that even sometimes when you have guests from other parts of the world whose language I don't speak, persons always come and ask, "Where's Antonia? Do you speak Russian, right? Or you speak Chinese, right?" I mean, like, automatically, because they know, yes, that I do have the language, but I always have to tell them, no, I don't. You need to call the embassy or something. But it's good it's good in a way to know that persons can turn to you for those reasons. And it's always good to know as well, it's always good that I have the ability to use the languages that I would have learned. Of course, mainly at university, I would have done French, but prior to that, I would have taken, some time off, similar to what Juliet would have done, and kind of expanded my knowledge, because I didn't always know. I guess this might be a trend, with the exception of yourself, in terms of knowing exactly what I wanted to do when I did my studies. I was somewhat just, what should I say, open to the different possibilities. And I would have to say that hospitality somewhat found me, more so than I went towards it. I didn't want to be a teacher. That I can say. If I had to, I would have, but that was not really where I wanted to go. So hence the reason why I also did management as well, so that I can at least broaden my scope. So because in Barbados, you tend to be a little bit boxed in. Of course, you're on a small island, limited possibilities, etc. And knowing what the options were at the time, and knowing that I did not want to be a teacher, I consciously told myself I needed to do something else besides languages, because that would generally be where you would be heading to. So for that reason, I would have done my management courses, and then of course I would have gone on to do my master's as well in international management, which of course is there. Now, as it relates to how I am as a person, I always tended to be a career-minded person. Like I said, not really sure exactly where I wanted to be, but knowing that I wanted to do something important and to be someone that made a difference. I come from a family of 4 brothers. I have no sisters. So I've always had to be very competitive. That's just been my personality from day one. I've been, fighting with them from very small. So it's in me to have the will to survive, practically. Because having, and 3 of them being older than me, it's not easy. So of course I would have done my, as I said, my bachelor's and my master's. One thing though that I will say in terms of being language students, being graduates, potential graduates of the university. For me, I had a doubt in that I wasn't sure that I would have been accepted in terms of marketability. And that kind of goes back to why I said I would have studied management, because sometimes persons, and if you do have this fear, I completely relate, because I had the same thing in terms of not knowing exactly where I wanted to be, who I want, in which direction I really wanted to go, not quite sure if I am good enough. And of course, with Barbados and with a lot of jobs, you always get a situation where persons are asking for experience. And if you have not really racked up any experience, it can be a bit discouraging. I would have, of course, applied to a lot of places, try different things as well, because you never know, like Ian would have said, you kind of do things, you fail at them, and at least you know that you would have done it, and you're either really good at it or you're not, and you can either cross it off your list or keep it on your list. So I would have done those things, and that's why I then said that hospitality kind of found me, in that I was not always where I am. I mean, to kind of give you an idea of where I would have started, where I would have started. I started doing a lot of, when I was at university, even pre-university at like community college, etc. I did a lot of touring. I was a tour guide, for example, not really making a whole lot of money at the time. I used to do tours with Goddard's in the port, do Italian tours, French tours. I used to do the museum tour to kind of just get my name out there, kind of be someone that persons may look to. So I did that, and I liked it, but I knew that it wasn't something that I always wanted to do, but at least it allowed me to use the languages that I would have developed. So after that, I moved into destination management, which is, I worked for a company where I started to do repping. You go to hotels, meet guests, tell them about the island, try to sell as on a commissionable basis, try to make some money while booking excursions, etc. for persons. So I would have done all that. Now, when I came into UE, I was still doing that, but I was more focused on the management aspect. But my advice as well is don't be too quick to want to jump into management. It's a process. If that's maybe where you're heading, I don't know if any of you are doing management courses with your languages. Any of you are? Anyone? Right. Don't be too quick, because there's always a lot for you to learn. And if you were to take, like, for example, this these experience here that I had while I was at UE. Of course, you can see Chris is in the picture. I don't know if you can see that. And Helen, she's also in the picture as well. We would have done some theater back then. I don't know, is that still happens, right? Oh, okay. Well, it was a lot of fun. I can tell you that we did a theater, the theater festivals among the campuses. So this would have been, I was playing a man, and that the middle shot right there. Yeah, I had beard and everything. But this just gives you a snapshot, kind of like, of where I would have come from in terms of where I am now. So just to kind of give you an idea, like I said, we would have done the language courses, theater, etc. The one on the left, I was actually in Spain as well, because doing the Masters in International Management, it actually allowed me, you had the choice of either having 6 weeks of a Spanish course or 2 weeks in Spain. So I don't know, it was a little bit of a difficult choice. So yeah, we actually, about 98% of the class went to Spain. So yeah, I was in Spain, we went to Madrid, and we actually took in quite a lot of the culture as well. I actually have a photo there of the bullfighting. That was real. I was actually there seeing it live. It's not for the faint of heart, I will tell you, because they actually do kill the bulls. But it doing these things helps you to enlarge in your mind. I would always advise persons, whether you're from Barbados or not, to travel, because it allows you to expand. It allows you to even get a greater appreciation of who you are as a person, because it allows you to appreciate things that you may take for granted. Even, for example, when I was in Germany, the family that I stayed with, how can I put this in a nice way? Our personalities didn't really, mesh. Particularly the dad, he was a very authoritative type guy, and I'm not really accustomed to that. My father is very laid back, so to have someone totally opposite to him was a bit of a challenge. But I wouldn't change that experience at all, because it allowed me to find out who I was, what I was able to accept, what I was able to tolerate, because when you're out of your comfort zone, you have to kind of fight and figure out who you are and figure out for yourself, what you can and can't take. And that experience definitely made me do that. And so I come back, now to Barbados, and I'm more aware of myself as a person. I know who I am, what I want to do. Nobody can really change me now. So yeah, that's just the way I am. And of course, I would have graduated in 2011. Did after my master's, and yes, I did have different hair back then. Now, in terms of kind of going back, because I digressed a little bit, in terms of going back, as it relates to how I got to where I currently am as guest relations manager, I was very persistent. Don't give up. As other persons would have shared with you earlier, you have to keep knocking on doors. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't really like, but it's just a means to an end. You kind of start, but you have that goal in mind as to where you want to be, where you want to get, so you kind of do anything to get to that point. I would have also mentioned previously, just slightly, in terms of knowing my worth, knowing who I am, because that's also very important. And it's not in a way of being like cocky or anything, but knowing who you are, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to do. Because sometimes, of course, you can be placed in situations that aren't the most comfortable, but you yourself have to know who you are and your worth, not only academically, but even personally as well, because sometimes you can go through things that can test you on many levels. But even for like an employer, knowing who you are, because I do interviews as well, and there are certain things that you look for in a person when you're interviewing. So knowing who you are as a person, if you're now going into the job market, is very, very important. So make sure, like others would have shared with you, doing your CV, doing any little odd jobs, knowing that you shouldn't just be looked over, be persistent, as Juliet would have said, harass is also, it's a good thing, not too much, but you still do it enough that you're remembered. And that's also a very key thing. And also having realistic expectations, because I find sometimes I had unrealistic expectations for a brief moment when I left UA. I also heard persons saying the same thing. When I leave UE, I'm going to be X. I'm going to go and find a job. I'm going to work at this particular place. Some people already have it planned out in their mind, that a job will show up, a job will happen as soon as you finish study. Oh, I've studied in Spanish, so I'm going to find a job where I can use Spanish. It doesn't always work that way. And you will soon realize that for those who haven't, who aren't already in the job market, you will soon realize it. You have to be realistic in terms of what you expect, but be willing to work to get to that point, to get to the point that you believe that you should be at. And we'd have mentioned taking risk. I myself am not a huge risk taker, I must say, but it's also important to kind of know when to take a risk. Juliet, I don't know, you're very unique in terms of what you would have done, to get to where you are. But it's also important, that's also part of as well to know when to take the risks, because sometimes they come, sometimes you're not quite sure. Sometimes you let things pass you by, but it's for yourself, again, to know where you want to be and be willing or not willing to take the risk. And of course, that also comes with timing as well, because how I got to where I currently am, the reason I have these two logos at the bottom was because I was working at this destination company, West Indian International Tours, working as a rep, subsequently then working as groups and incentives executive, which is a coordinator where you would organize conferences, events, meetings, organize accommodation, all these different things for persons who are coming to the island. And there was a point where I had enough of it. I didn't really want to do it anymore. My heart wasn't really in it anymore. And I was kind of looking for something else to do. And it just so happened that this group that was staying at Tamarind, I went to check in on them for, I can't remember what it was, something that I could have done the following day, but for some reason I went the evening, and this was about 8 o'clock or so at night. I just wanted to get it done because I'm also that type of person. I'm very detailed, I like to make sure I see things through. And while I was there, I met the deputy GM who introduced herself to me, and I'm thinking to myself, why? You know, why did she come and introduce herself to me? I was just at a loss because I went there for a totally different reason, but I was introduced to this lady. And then, like 2 days after, I got a call from the same person asking if I was interested in doing what I'm currently doing. And I honestly didn't hesitate because, like I said, I was ready to kind of go from where I was at the time to the hotel. But the risk was that I had never worked in a hotel before. I was somewhat familiar with the hotel in that the previous job would allow me to gain certain experiences, etc. But I never worked in a hotel before. And similar to Chris, I also never had any hospitality experience or training per se. It's a lot to do with personality, I must say. I generally tend to be a very quiet person. I don't talk a whole lot. Although, in this current role, I find that I have to talk a lot more than I'm used to. But it just so happened that some people call it luck. I believe in journey, that I was able to move from one company right into the other. But that also spoke volumes in terms of how I was able to get it was because persons were watching me. Persons were looking at me when I didn't know that I was being watched. And that's a lesson that I have learned, and I always try to advocate it as much as possible because for me, it's my motto, which you will see a bit later, but I can always still kind of mention it now. For me, what's most important is that I am my own business card. I always say that because nobody can tell you who to be or tell you who you should be. You know, you are your own business card. You're your own marketing tool in that your experiences, the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you interact, you know, all of these things kind of develop you as a person. And so for me, that's what's most important. Of course, why I'm still at the job that I am is because where I currently am, is because I do have the drive to succeed. I've always been that way. If you look at the sheet that you have as it relates to my quote, I've always had that drive where my father would always tell me to always be the best that I can be. I've been that way. Even when I think about it, the voice that I hear in my head is my father's. Not that my mother wasn't present. My mother was very present, but he was always the one to be encouraging me and my brothers to always aim for the best, always aim for the highest. Even now, he's asking me when am I going to do my doctorate. And I'm like, just hold on. I need a bit of a break, you know. But he's always that type of person because he himself didn't have the opportunities He was the oldest of his siblings, and he had to take care of them from a young age. So he didn't have the opportunity, and he tries to make sure that we go as far as we can. And of course, that resonates in me and probably my children when I don't have any right now, but you know, who knows. I also love what I do. I really do. It's that's why I can stay at work for 13 hours sometimes, because if I didn't, trust me, I wouldn't be there for that long. But it is important to love what you do as well. And for me, it's hands down one of the most important things, particularly working with persons, with people every day. Not the easiest persons at times to deal with. Sometimes you get them shouting at you and other things that I won't go into at the moment. But yeah, so it also calls for a lot of patience as well, and confidence, because sometimes when persons think that they can walk over you, you usually get walked over. I'm a very patient person. I would encourage, I don't know, and we did talk about temperament and stuff before. I generally I've been told I'm extremely patient. For example, you have sometimes guests that when you step from in front of the guest face and you go into the back office, some people, you just see the, it's, yeah, you kind of vent when you go in the back behind people's, out of the sight of persons. People shut the door. I've done that already, but not too often. But you kind of get that because sometimes persons can't deal with situations. And for some reason, people always come to me to deal with a troubled guest, someone who's ready to check out, someone who's just I have to say, cussing like down the place when something doesn't work out, and up to, when was it? Thursday, we had a guest who, she was 7 months pregnant. So she was a little bit hormonal. Husband as well, too, he was probably worse than she was. And yeah, the lady from the front, that she ran at the back, Antonia, can you come and deal with this guest? She's ready to blow up the whole hotel, pretty much. And so I came out, I said, well, just tell the lady I'm here, I'll be willing to speak with her. I was expecting this big bad wolf, honestly, based on the description, and they were so scared to deal with this lady because apparently she was on the phone, like shouting and all these sort of things. And she came down, and she was about my height or so, probably just a little bit taller. Her husband came down with her, and to make a long story short, by the end of the whole ordeal, they were so happy. They were hugging me. They, it was like, you're so wonderful, and, are you going to be at work tomorrow? And, you were the only one that really took the time. Thank you so much for your patience. I get that a lot. So in hospitality, you need to be patient. When you're on the front line, you have to be patient, definitely. But you also have to be confident enough to know your role as well. But you also have to be humble. That's also another very important trait. Because you can be confident, but you can also become overconfident. What keeps me grounded is that I'm a humble person generally. I mean, persons wouldn't know that I speak 5 languages unless I mention it. Persons wouldn't know that I am guest relations manager, because some persons take manager and, head kind of swells and, all of a sudden their feet can't touch the ground, sort of thing. But you can ask me anything. You can talk to me about anything. I've been in situations where I had to clean rooms, mop floors, push water. I've done everything. So it's never a situation where I think that I'm too good for a particular role. And so that's something I would also mention to you in terms of just be accessible, be willing to do anything, because that also speaks volumes as well as a person. Employers like that. If you're willing to start, even if you're willing to start from the ground and go up, once they see that you're willing to do anything, well, within reason, of course, then they generally tend to gravitate towards you. Now, like I said, my advice, just in closing, like I mentioned, you are your own business, your best business card. So please take that with you, in anything you do, how you speak, even sometimes with persons that you may associate with. It speaks to you. It's your journey. It really can't get any better than that. I should probably put that on a t-shirt, I think. So don't steal it, okay? All right. Like I mentioned, being responsible for your own journey. You are the one that nobody can do it for you. Whether you're a risk taker or you're risk averse, be responsible, take ownership for it, and make sure that you enjoy it to the max. And then lastly, I will say always look for ways of improving yourself, improving on you, because in this in Barbados, persons can be a bit boxed in, etc. But try as many different things as possible. Try to make yourself as marketable as possible, because you never know where you might end up. You never know when this small skill that you might have picked up some time ago actually can factor into what you're currently doing. You never know. So by all means, take any opportunity that comes your way and run with it, because like I said, you never know where you can end up, and really that's it. Yeah, so I hope you learned something from me.
Good morning. As you mentioned that you did German, for persons who would have a background in German, what markets are available in Barbados that we can explore?
Okay, as it relates to German, that is quite a small market, I will say. I can speak on my experience. Like I mentioned, I have done tour guiding. So what I would recommend, if you do have that skill, you do, get into contact with like, for example, Goddards, simply because they are the ones that mainly deal with anything as it relates to the German market in Barbados, whether it's cruise ships, whether it's transfers, anything of that sort. The airport as well too. They also have options, but like I said, it's very small. Hotels, definitely, because actually right now during the season we have 2 flights from Germany on a weekly basis to Barbados, and not many people speak German. So make yourself available. You can go around to the hotels. If you have business cards, make one, and just just put your name on it and let them know that for any reason they're looking for someone to interpret, to get them out of a sticky situation, to answer an email, whatever it is, you'll be the first person that they think of.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say that generally, I was really impressed by all the presentations. But of all, I can sympathize, or I can identify, a better word, with you, because you would have said that during your undergraduate journey, that you would have felt at times as though you were not sure. You felt discouraged. You were generally in a state of confusion. For me, it's a similar experience, because currently I'm studying Spanish with education. And when I fill out forms for work, right, being I don't have a background in terms of business subjects, POA, POB, what have you, when people look at my letter of application, people say, oh, you want to be a teacher, as if that's the only thing I can do because I'm studying Spanish with education. So what would be any advice that you would have for me as a person who is not doing management at the UE and who does not have a background in business? What advice would you have for me? Apart from probably the same that everybody was mentioning before, internships and stuff, what would be your advice for me in terms of looking for work part-time?
Part-time, okay.
Part-time as in during the summer and stuff like that.
So what can he do to develop towards a broader career profile, you mean? Yeah. What kind of things can he try to put on his CV as he's studying?
Okay. All right. Well, what I would say, I did mention management covers a whole spectrum, a broad spectrum. So definitely I would advise you doing some form of a management course. But it doesn't have to be intensive. It can be, accounting. I don't know if you're good with numbers, or it could just be organizational behavior, for example, where you can kind of just something broad, not anything necessarily specific, because employers, they like to know when persons have more of a broad spectrum, so that you're flexible, you're adaptable. So whereas you may not want to necessarily be a teacher, but you have studied Spanish in education, which kind of obviously puts you in that direction. You know, I would recommend doing some type of, you know, just try to broaden it, even if it's not a. You mentioned internships or not doing internships. I don't know what exactly were you thinking of doing during the summer if you're not interested in doing internships.
No, I am not dispelling the notion of internships.
Mm-hmm.
I am not dispelling the notion of internships, but I'm just saying internships where, right? Because as we know, Barbados is very business driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have friends who currently study accounting, do all kind of different business related subjects, and they look forward to the end of the semester because they know, okay, well, I'm going to do an internship at Ernst & Young or this place. And me as a humanitarian, I am here like, where am I? No, seriously, where am I going to intern? Because my current subjects, my current concentrations are more long term, right? In terms of short term. So that's what I'm saying. Like, what are my avenue possibilities? I don't know.
Well, definitely, as it relates to the language, you can definitely go into hotels, hospitality, because now, for example, just to share that's an example, since I've been at Tamarind, when I got the job, of course it was I pretty much got the job without applying, but since I've been there, they've actually changed the job description for my post within the group, because before you didn't have to have a language, now you do. Even as simple as like doing the front desk. I don't know if you're into like hospitality, I don't know in terms of temperament, etc. But there are a lot of places now, I can speak mainly of hospitality because that's where I am in, that are looking for persons with language skills. The concierge, right, I mentioned earlier, that's a post now that requires a language. Reception is also a post that requires a language. So perhaps you can look at those areas. I mean, now for summer, you know, in terms of occupancy, it will be a little bit lower, but like Juliet would have mentioned, volunteering. So just to get that aspect at least on your CV, just to broaden it a bit, I would recommend, you know, doing something along those lines.
I have a question for you. What is your long-term goal?
My long-term goal is to become a translator interpreter, but I use education as a means to. My long-term goal is to become an interpreter / translator. Yeah, but I use teaching of Spanish as a medium through which I practice with the language until I reach that state.
What's stopping you from doing it now?
Sorry?
What's stopping you from translating now?
Nothing is stopping me, but I just use teaching as a means to become even more confident with the language. If you get what I mean.
I get you. I'm just saying that you could do that now.
Understood.
You could do it now. I mean, like in between your classes, even if it's just for practice, go on UN Volunteers. There's an online, Google it. There's an online portal where there are people that post their needs. Like it could be an NGO in South Africa, it could be whatever. In terms of building your portfolio, which is exactly what you need right now, building a portfolio, you can do that. You can also, I mean, I'm an advocate for volunteering, I'm an advocate for internships, but if you want to get paid, then you need to network. Okay, so you need to tell people what you want to do, and you need to be able to say, look, if you're willing to pay me a small stipend, I'll do it for you. So that's foreign affairs. That might even be, I remember one time there was a gentleman that paid me from the villas. I went to interview for a job, and they were like, oh, you have Spanish. By the end of that interview, a gentleman I did not even know called me and said, I understand you have Spanish. I have a few things that I need done. Can you come up to my villa? I'll pay you per hour. I said, yes, thank you.
Okay, folks, I'm just going to make a suggestion about the rest of the program for now. We've kind of started into more general territory now, asking questions about specific people's careers and so forth. We have one more presentation, and we're running quite a bit behind schedule, so I'm going to suggest that we just have that now, and then we can carry on our discussion over the food and stuff, because I don't want to cut too much into the time of the technicians who are supposed to be finishing up at 12:30. Does everyone agree with that? You're not too starving? Can you handle another 15, 20 minutes of general discussion? Great. So if you have another question for any of the panelists, just save it. Just save it for now. We're just going to have 5 minutes with Tiffany, who's going to tell us about the graduate placement program, and that will be the end of the formal presentations, and we'll be able to open up the floor for the rest of the session. So Tiffany Lowe is the Alumni Career Services Assistant, and she is going to talk to us about the UE First Caribbean Graduate Placement Program, which is something that I certainly didn't know about. Maybe some of you have already stumbled across it, but it is an interesting option that is not for everybody. It is competitive in nature, and she's going to tell us something about that for those who may be eligible and interested. So, Tiffany, good morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, there is a UE graduate placement program. It actually was a pilot program, so that's why it's not that popular and it's not advertised really, because we realized the need for bridging the gap between graduates and employers, because obviously graduates knocking out of UE, we have a little to no experience, and obviously the employer needs employees who, they need persons who have work experience, and that has been an issue for employers and for graduates. So then they have decided now to bridge that gap and develop the graduate placement program. And this is in collaboration with the Office of Alumni Relations and CIBC First Caribbean Bank. So the program was initiated in 2010. And as I said, it ran as a pilot program, so they were testing it out to see how it would go. And so far, they had some students who have actually now have full-time positions in some of the conglomerates in Barbados and other areas as well. So it's basically a program where you have to go through a number of steps, and to be eligible, you have to, this is obviously a prerequisite from the bank. You have to have a GPA of 3.0 and up. Obviously, an innovative thinker. You have to have a willingness to learn, a strong personality, and what you can do is to apply through the Office of Alumni Relations. But right now we have developed a website. There's a link on your paper. It's not actually the correct link because the website has not been launched. We are launching hopefully this month, and then you will get the correct site, and that probably will be posted to the generic email that you guys have, so everybody would get a heads up as to the program. The steps. Basically what you do when the site goes up, you will have access to the site, and you can go on and you can post your CV, and then there'll be an assessment interview. And you'll have that interview, and then you'll be asked to do a career workshop. Now that's imperative, because before the career workshop does not mean that you're actually in the program. You have to go through the career workshop. And at the career workshop, basically you have a number of employers who probably potentially will be there. You'll have the career specialists who will be there as well, giving you advice. You can ask them questions. They get a bit to know about your personality, the areas you want to study in, and so on. And then from there, then you're evaluated. And then, obviously, if you are selected, you will get a call, and then you'll be put forward to the employer. And then you will have probably an interview with the employer, and then you go into the placement. And then you also have the mentoring and support aspect of it, where you can be mentored by the employer, or you can also be mentored by the alumni office. So there are a number of things, a number of steps, I think about 5 steps I just mentioned you have to go through to qualify. yes, it says 3.0 to qualify, but if you have a nice high 2 point something, I would still advise you to to apply. Don't limit yourself to say, oh well, I don't have 3, so that's it for me. I would still apply. So go right ahead. And I have seen persons who don't have a 3.0 actually qualify for the program, as I was looking through some stuff. So it's there, people. It's an opportunity that when I was at U, I didn't have, and I think is a great idea. Again, after hearing the presenters and hearing some of the questions coming out, persons are asking, where do I look? Where do I go? So here's an avenue for you, provided by the university. So look it up. You can get a sneak peek of the link that's on the paper, even though it shouldn't be there, but you can take a sneak peek of it. And as soon as this website is up and running, then you have full access and you can post your CV, and not only will it provide opportunities for you, but it's out there for employers to see. So even though employer may not have a position right away, they can actually log onto it as well. And then if something does come up, they can contact you. It may not necessarily be a full-time position. It could be a temporary position. It could be a pilot project they're working on. All these things will look great on your CV. So get involved. And what I would advise too is to find out the organizations that are at the university, because when I was there, I did not know there was actually an alumni office. And there are a lot of avenues that are there that we don't know about. So I would advise you to look into it, go on the website, especially the university website, and go through it thoroughly, see if there are anything, contact them and see, is there anything that I possibly can do? There are also positions within a university that are temporary that students, there's students assistants that they have that possibly you can do. So don't limit yourself. Go onto the site and let it work for you. Are there any questions in relation to the placement program?
Just to be clear, because I thought initially when I read through the website thing that it was something that just found you some kind of internship or something, but it does actually put people in substantive posts. This,
yes,
so
it does.
It is possibly for the rest of their lives, right? It finds you a job, this program, and it may be something that is temporary or part-time, but it may also be something that isn't. So it's a portal that the employers are trying to use to refine their recruitment mechanism so that they already know that you are sorted for having gone through a training program and for eligibility in certain fields of work and so forth. So if you do have anywhere near the requisite GPA, it's very much worth getting onto.
I actually have 2 testimonials here that are actually on the site. For those, I can read them to you now. One is from Stephen Karmabat. He has a placement at the Barbados Shipping and Trading Company. And he says, I consider the graduate placement program to be optimal on the job learning experience. It provides challenges and learning opportunities that can develop any graduate or student in more aspects than any other job. I was placed at the Barbados Shipping and Trading Company Limited. There, I was attached to one of the BS&T's many subsidiaries and got the opportunity to work in various areas of their core business. Although my background is information technology, I was exposed to aspects of accounting and finance, human resources, sales and marketing, and as well as project management. I was given opportunities to coordinate and manage special projects while developing good communication skills, decision-making, and teamwork. The program is a great opportunity to grow professionally and personally, and I recommend it to any graduate or student. So again, you may be a language student, but you can develop your skills just by going and doing a small internship, a small project. Even for you, I heard you said about your education, but if you go and you do what we call a stint, somewhere, and you try going from sales and marketing into, again, project management or something, all that can go on your CV. So, it helps. It helps. It can help.
Since Tiffany mentioned it as well, the link, the very first link there at the bottom of your program about updating your record with the alumni office, that's very much, if you're someone who's about to graduate now, that's very much something that is worth doing, along with filling in the questionnaire we've given you today and leaving it before you go. Because we do get, every now and again, requests to locate people to fulfill specific posts, or can we recommend people for a post that is being advertised for which there is a vacancy in a very wide variety of different areas, in offshore, in tourism, translating, institutions like the UN and so forth. They are sent to the university, and we're expected to be able to communicate with our graduates in order to make you aware of those kinds of opportunities. The only way we can do that is if we do have a recent email address for you. So if you change your normal email address, then go into the update your record thing there, and do it in like a couple of months, because it's being upgraded at the moment. But do try and make a conscious effort to keep in touch with us, and by all means send an email to a member of staff who you got on with reasonably well and tell them what you're doing. Right? We always like receiving those kind of things wherever you are, whatever you're doing, because it just may be that we can help link you up with somebody else, or that there is somebody who's interested in the line of work you're now in, or if you're doing nothing, that there is something that we can steer you towards doing because we happen to have heard of something that is in that area. So, basically the message is do keep in touch with us. Does anyone have any questions now, either for Tiffany about the graduate placement program or in general for any of the panelists? Or it doesn't have to be a question, it can be a concern, a declaration.
Hello, I have a general question / statement thing. The success, versatility, and dynamism expressed are still contingent on having a management degree or another supplementary degree in addition to languages. Do you think that there are constraints in only having degrees in languages? And if so, what are the implications, and how can we make ourselves more marketable in a sphere that already has limited job opportunities? I mean, should we try to get another degree? And the languages that you've studied in the past, though essential, they still play, in my estimation, inferior roles. And there isn't a plethora of spaces for us to occupy where languages are at the forefront. Or if there are internationally, they're relatively obscure when you consider other jobs that are out there that people can easily recognize. But one of the presenters did mention taking courses in business specific to this young man's question, but in my estimation, you can only go so far with a few minor courses, and from that knowledge gained from those courses. So for us who are only studying languages, French and Spanish, or me, I'm only doing French and English literature, what advice do you have, or what comments can you make on that? Anybody?
Yeah, that was very well expressed concern about specialization and what you have on your degree certificate and final transcript. And it is certainly true that if it is just a humanities looking transcript without some kind of more vocational looking certificate there, then there is the pathway that Juliet took, which is then to do a degree in something, because your BA was just Spanish, right, Julia? In integration studies, after she had stumbled across that from her frenetic saying yes to anything that came up for a couple of years. And that worked out, obviously well for her. That was something you did integration studies at UWI, right? It was something that was offered here. So she could do that from home. But, I would say you're quite right that just doing some courses or something sounds a little bit vague as a way of trying to make yourself more marketable outside the very specifically language-oriented careers like teaching, translating, interpreting, and so forth. But the other thing that can supplement that is some kind of experience. So the volunteering, the even going and doing something, you're doing filing in an institution, a bank or whatever. If you make yourself really useful there and you start to understand how that institution, you get a good reference from somebody who's managing a department and so forth. Those kinds of things, just like Chantal's marketing grade was ultimately redeemed and salvaged by the fact that she had experience that obviously overrode that apparent indication of her aptitude. You know, you can do it through that route as well, but it is true that some extra study or some experience usually needs to be brought to bear if you're going to broaden out into a lot of these fields that we've been looking at today. Does anyone else? Juliet, do you want to? As the non-management.
I guess because I operate in a sphere that's not very traditional, I see the world in a completely different space. And I consider myself very fortunate to see how even job trends and hiring trends are shifting. As a consultant, we are able to get a little bit more jobs because people are downsizing. And I'm saying all of this to say, you always have to be studying. You always have to take a course. You always have to be relevant. It's part of the competitiveness of this world. Do you require to have another degree just to start your career off? No. Because everyone that stood up here said, you know what, we just had our few languages we may not have even studied in that area, and yet we were mid-career when we decided we were going to take on our masters. The secret is about your experience and your ability to market yourself as an individual, your ability to pick up those few little skills that make you into the ideal candidate for whatever job. Understood? And then you go from there.
The question is directed towards Juliet. As a person who would have studied a bachelor's degree in just Spanish as your major, how was the transition from humanities to social sciences, having a master's in integration studies?
It's exactly what I was just telling you.
How were you able to adapt?
I volunteered. I volunteered my way into a job. And then once don't get me wrong, UE may be a little bit easier, especially if it's a newer course. But depending on where you're trying to, if you want to get into Oxford, then I suggest, you do a few more degrees and you get ample grades. But there are other ways of maneuvering into something like that. I did my gender and development course. I did a few other things, and I worked.
Let me just ask something even more specific then, which is the same kind of thing. I assume most of the people in the integration studies program, the students, your fellow students, had come from a social sciences background.
Correct.
Did you find that you were at any kind of disadvantage as far as
it was very difficult for me.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
You were playing catch up a little bit then with some of the
it was
concepts.
difficult because it was in a new area, and masters, they don't, especially at UE, they don't give you that masters. You have to work for it. Okay, it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of analysis, it's a lot of sleepless nights. This is the reality, whether you're doing Spanish translation or you're doing marketing, right? But in terms of me being able to qualify, I was able to qualify based on my experience. Okay, and that's what I want to drive home. As far as from where I sit, I said in my TEDx presentation that I view certificates as a stamp of approval, if anything. But the proof is in the pudding. If you're able to get it done, right, who's going to take that away from you? You've done it, right? The certification part gets, you get to refine it, you get to focus on it, etc. But if you go out there and do it, who is going to take that practical education away from you? We have moved so far away from things like apprenticeship, which is actually learning by doing, and that's how I learn. You understand what I mean? So there's nothing stopping you from pursuing what you need to pursue. You understand what I mean? And then you get your qualification that gives you that stamp of approval, and you get a little bit more money. But it doesn't stop you from getting a job. Just get out there and be practical and do it.
I just want to say thanks, Dr. Craig, for the clarification, because that's exactly what I meant.
Right.
Because as Antonio was saying, she advised me to take a few courses in management. Not necessarily something specific to management, but something more general, just to open my mind into that field. But really and truly, realistically speaking, the university does not allow for you to be so varied. It's very strict. You have to complete these amount of credits, these amount of subject courses in order to get your recognized major or minor, right? Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to know how it was that, as somebody who was under that regime, could switch from faculty, so to speak, from education to social sciences. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not easy, and that if you're doing a major and a minor, or even worse, a double major, you don't have a lot of elective slots throughout your program to be going and
to be out of
speculatively trying
faculty.
to
Yeah.
build something in another faculty. That's quite true. But, you know, Juliet did get in and she did it. She got the masters. So where there's a will, there's a way. You know, you can do it if you, again, supplementing it with the experience that she got initially through volunteering. And, you know, it's a complicated pathway where you can't really map it out, this, yeah, and you've got to be prepared to blunder into things. You know, if you do think, well, I like the idea of, I'm logical and I like the idea of working in an organization, I'm a good planner, maybe try and do the organizational, what's it called again? Behavior course, for example. If you think you might be into HR or whatever it is, even just 2 or 3 courses here and there, if you can pick them up along the way, that might lead towards, might help persuade them to say, okay, we're going to let this guy into integration studies because he did do this. He showed an interest at an earlier stage. But no, it's not easy, you're right, because it doesn't have a particularly flexible structure, the degree here. It's you don't get an initial year, for example, where you can do all kinds of things to test, which you do in some universities. So it's tough, but, you know, again, you've got the online route as well. You can try and find things there that maybe you could do an online program over a summer. It'll cost you a bit of money or something. But, you know, if you've done something like that that has cost you money and involves an investment of time, and you've done it whilst you are doing your undergraduate degree, then, you know, we look at these things. Antonio was talking about looking at CVs and interviewing people. We're in the same process now of hiring people. And we look to see, is this person really being creative about making sure that they're doing something all the time? Have they shown that they really are a curious person who is driven? It doesn't matter if it's a little bit varied. Yeah, that's better these days. Yeah, we're not going to say, oh, look, they went off and did something in publishing, so they can't be. No, that could be a good thing. Suggest they're going to be good with a computer, which we like because we need them to use the e-learning properly, right? So those kind of things, you know, we make those kind of connections. This person went and did this, they know how to use this and that. They proved they can use it. I didn't just put, I know how to use desktop publisher 2.0. They actually worked in a publisher. So clearly they actually do know how to use it. So here's somebody who's a bit tech savvy. Well, that can be something that we can think, yeah, that's going to be good. We're not going to have to hold their hand with teaching them how to do this or that. So, you know, it can have all kinds of positive effects, even if it doesn't seem directly related. So, you know, even just a little participate in a webinar or whatever it is on some website you have, put yourself around in Juliet's way. Yeah, even if you're a little bit introverted. You know, I was very impressed with Antonia's thing that she knows herself very well. She knows that she's quiet, but in her job she has to talk a little bit more than maybe she's always comfortable with. She also knows she's somewhat risk averse, but at times she has to push herself to take a risk because it's the right thing to do at the time. So it's the same thing. If you're somebody who's doesn't really like putting themselves out there and selling themselves, maybe you have to be a little bit more of a salesman. Doesn't mean you have to change your personality and, you know, pretend you're Juliet and walk out on the street and be a bundle of energy all day.
I
Right.
developed this. That's why I told you. Like, I cringe. I still do. But I developed it. You understand?
Right, but you know, you can have a different self-presentation, like Antonia is a slightly more serious kind of style of presentation. You can have a different self-presentation, but you have to develop a professional persona that is going to enable you to explain why it's worth hiring you for something. It can't just be on the paper, you know?
You have to show why you want it.
Yeah, and you know, why you're going to be able to do it. Really, that's what's most important, yeah? Is that, yeah. Can you give it that?
All right, I just wanted to add to the first question as it relates to what you would have mentioned in terms of even if it's a small course, etc. Just bear in mind from a personal standpoint, I didn't get the job that I am currently in because I had management. I actually got the job because of experience, because of what person saw. Nobody knew until I dropped the CV into the company that I had management or I had a master's. It was actually simply based on what they saw. So for an employer, sometimes they don't have to know what your qualifications are. You may just simply be the type of person that may fit in to whatever it is that they're looking for. So by all means, you know, it's not a discouragement from studying any type of management course even in your case as well, is just being out there. And sometimes you don't even know when you're out there, practically, because I didn't know. But look at where I am now. I mean, I don't want to sound cliche, but if I can do it, you can as well. So just always be open to possibilities.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to say to the organizers, thank you so much, because I know that's something that we have been very, very hungry for. We needed this. And I would really like a repeat next semester, but just putting it out there. Yes. Okay, I was right. There's this site that I've never finished any of the courses, but they do offer online courses. It's Allison, ALISON.com. They offer courses. I started one in psychology and one in some business something, but I haven't finished. But I get to that point, I'll tell you about it. But feel free to venture there. My question, I have a question, and my question is directed to Tiffany. All right, there we go. For the graduate placement programs, is it just for Barbados?
No, it's just not for Barbados. It's for the UE graduate and not the UE graduate of Barbados.
Okay, let me
So
rephrase.
once you the employer has a post and you qualify for it, apply, and obviously you let them know, well, I'm not from here, and
Are
then
all the posts here?
pardon?
Are all the
You
posts
want to know
here?
if the posts are here in Barbados? That's what you're asking me?
Yes, please.
We don't want to limit it to Barbados. Right now they are, but we don't want to limit it to Barbados only. Yeah, I mean, if there are opportunities to open up in the region because there are other campuses out there as well, great.
That's all. Thank you.
Yes. Oh. Yeah, I just wanted to address this young man here in the yellow shirt. When I left UE the first time in 2004, after a couple of years, I felt to go to BIMAP, and I don't want to push another school at UE.
Please do.
We're supposed to be promoting UE. Okay, but I went to BIMAP. They do have a certificate program that I believe it's 3 courses and a couple of seminars, and you actually complete, and you can go 1 course at a time, not like UE that will kill you. I was then encouraged to continue and to drag those certificate courses into a diploma there, which I finished, and you have to finish doing a thesis. But again, it is 1 course at a time. If you can't handle 2 courses, you might be busy, you might be at work, you might be like Juliet all over the place. So, you may only be able to handle 1 course at a time. They also have seminars, which are like 1 day in all kinds of areas. I think they've even had a program or a seminar workshop kind of thing for very young people. I'm a young person, but some of you are much younger than me. And for very young people, just I think coming out of secondary school, how to go to an interview and all that kind of thing. Some of you wouldn't be interested in that because you're beyond that. But they have things for all levels, all kinds. And most of the courses are in the evening. So you could probably look at that. Anybody else who's interested?
Thank you very much, Susan. Yeah, that's very good advice. By all means, use BIMAP. It's there, well respected, I think. And, if you can get practice doing interviews and that kind of thing, go through some kind of formal advice-giving procedure about how to deal with an interview, that always helps build your confidence and stuff as well, but also the actual business courses and things. Just very quickly, Chantal, you did you're finishing your MSc, right, with the University of Leicester now, is that right? And you're doing that entirely by distance? Can you just say something about how you cope with that, given your time zone issue already with your job? And
it's been a difficult 5 years, very difficult. I actually realized when I was studying that I'm the sort of person who needs to have someone in front of me to actually learn.
I do not like reading books that are not interesting to me. I mean, I found out the hard way because I failed a couple of my courses and I had to take them over. So then I had to get a personal tutor to actually work with me and try to figure out where I was going wrong. Like you, I was also from humanities. Didn't know anything about writing analytically and objectively. I mean, when I got my feedback from most of my tutors, it was that I was writing a bit descriptively.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to then reassess what I was doing and try to put it in a more, I guess, objective, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to develop those skills. Coming on to the end now with the dissertation, it was a challenge, very big challenge, and it was hard. trying to finish it, and then my responsibilities I got more responsibilities, traveling a lot, so trying to finish it while I was in different time zones, and obviously Leicester's in UK, so they're how many ever hours ahead, and I may be in California, which is how many ever hours behind, and trying to have to get a conversation with the tutor over there, kind of like we wasted a day, because just trying the accessibility of the person was a bit difficult. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's the hardest possible formula if you have a job that involves a lot of travel and a very heavy time commitment, and you're trying to do a distance degree that involves Skyping or whatever, or simultaneous communication with somebody. And as you said, it depends if you're somebody who's good at self-motivating, or if you discover then that you really would rather prefer a classroom and some fellow students and somebody who's actually talking.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you fall asleep, which is a lot of people actually. It is very tough, but the point is you're pretty much at the end now,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Has it been expensive?
Not as expensive as some other programs I know about. There's some others that are in the $40,000 Barbados range.
Mm-hmm.
This one was in the $20,000 range.
Okay.
And they send the materials to me and all that. So, yeah.
And is it something Gildan wants you to do, or
no? It was. I actually
It's totally
started
your
it when I
own.
was in customer service. It was just
Okay.
an area that I was interested in, and I decided to
Mhm.
go ahead and do it.
Get it done. Well, I hope you get the results you want. Congratulations.
I
on
hope
getting
so
to the
too. Thank you.
This young lady here had a question, though, from way back. After Leandra, then?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My question isn't directly to one person. Anybody could respond. Well, I'm a third-year student and just finished my last courses. And the thing is now that I know that from September I'll be going on my year abroad. But I find I have certain, well, I must say I did French with Spanish. Spanish is my minor. I have certain reservations when it comes to promoting myself now, because I know in a short while I'm leaving. And I don't want to go and put it out there and then somebody calls me and I'm like, okay, well, I'm leaving next month, can't do it. But then I think, okay, when I come back, I would like to have certain things in place that I can, when I come back and promote myself, look, I've done the year abroad now, I have extra skills. So what would advice could any of you give me given my specific situation?
Wow.
Number 1, start networking from now. Number 2, if you like to write, make yourself a blog and blog about your experience and what you're learning and put pictures and all of that kind of stuff, right? When you get back, then you're able to blog to your community that's now following you, right? And send it to your employer and say, look, or put it as part of your CV saying, this is what I've learned, this is what I've been doing, I'm now looking for jobs in this, and direct it to them, because then somebody can go there and say, oh, wow, they can see your writing abilities, your analytical abilities, what you've been doing. Like, this is the best platform. The previous generation didn't have this, right? And so I would recommend that you do something like that to ensure that you keep current and that you have something to show for when you get back in your hiring capabilities.
I know that you did translation from English to French for your Caribbean study, and I know that you like translation. Well, while you're in Martinique, you can pick up on Juliet's suggestion that you do some volunteer translating practice. That's the kind of way you can promote yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think Emanuela asked my question, but I did have a suggestion for you as well. You could try doing some of the co-curricular courses that the university offers. I know nobody mentioned it, but I did one that was in alcohol and other drugs of abuse. And there are many others, and I think they're good in terms of preparing you for if you want to do volunteer, or just basically giving you an idea of life post UE or something like that. So you could try doing one of those, and you're already paying for it, so you could try one of those.
Yeah, co-curricular courses are a good thing to look at too. I haven't mentioned the SEED program, the Entrepreneurial Development Program, which is now offered in the form of a co-curricular course, where they bring in an entrepreneur and you do the course and you actually pitch ideas to somebody who's set up their own business and is already successful in it, and they will shoot it down and tell you how to improve it and so on and so forth. That's one. If you're early on in the UE journey, you can maybe think about if you have an entrepreneurial interest at all, or slant of any kind. But the other ones too, yeah, there are all kinds of co-curricular courses that, as she was saying, you can explore a little bit other areas that you might be interested in. Okay, go ahead.
If there are no more questions, we're going to wrap it up. And it was wonderful. I did not expect something as interesting and varied as what we had with our... I was hoping it was going to be enlightening, but this was really interesting. There were a variety of personalities and a variety of experiences too. I learned a lot about the different options that are now available to you. And obviously they were not available to the previous generation. So you have to take advantage of those. I wanted to insist on the fact that if you can go abroad to study, please, or to do something, to do anything, in fact, please do. We have 3 students here tonight. Today going to France. Deepa, Kelly, and Leandra over there going to Martinique, and Deepa and Kelly going to France. Yeah. And so now I think what you should be doing is continue learning a language, do it with passion, and you will find something that you like as a job. Don't freak out about it, don't be too scared. If you do something that you like with passion, you're going to end up doing a job that you like, for sure. So don't worry about it. Also, for those who are going to become teachers, and I'm sure those who are going to France to teach English as a second language, they are going to love it and they are going to become teachers then. They will want to become teachers. But our MA in Caribbean Studies includes 2 courses that are for teachers. One is TESOL, Teaching English as a Second Language, and the other one is Teaching Foreign Languages. So if you were to do this MA in Caribbean Studies, and you will have noticed that all our speakers either have an MA or are doing an MA. So this is not finished. It's not only your career beginning, it's also a lifelong studies, hopefully, for everybody. I know at this point, just after exam, you don't want to go into more studies, but after, after you come back from vacation, you will want to do this. So now we invite you to fill out your questionnaires and give them to one member of staff, and also to go outside for refreshments, and you can talk to our guest speakers, whom I really thank for giving back to the institution. And give them your number, or if you, or ask them for their business cards. You know, keep in touch with them, and keep in touch with us for the third year students. Please let us know what's going on in your life. Thank you.